feel like we haven't got over the. It's always the long delay. See that? We didn't know what to do. We both were sitting every time like, it's a long pause. A long pause to start episode 33, Pours with Patriots, joined by another Army guy. It's always good to not have to take down the flag and put up another branch I really don't love as much. And especially before we get started, before the big introduction, we have to shout out to our branch. Today is our birthday.
Happy
248th birthday of the Army. To all the Marines out there, you know, so we don't make a big deal out of it. It's just, it is what it is. We know we're better. We don't have to talk about it for a week leading up to it. So
it speaks for itself.
Exactly. So happy birthday to all the Army folks listening. Happy birthday.
Happy birthday.
Yeah, awesome. Well, I'm joined tonight, episode 33, by not an original Ohioan. He's actually from Michigan, which is good, but he's an Army guy. Like I said, if you've seen some of the posts that I put up, Lieutenant Colonel Kevin Martin, a doctor. So we have another doctor in the house. So you can put all your orthopedic questions into the questions and comments later on. He'll answer those at another time, free of charge. And
I'll get to you tomorrow.
Which may be never. That's all right. So we'll start off with, we always start off with quotes. So I found a couple good doctor quotes. I used the best doctor quote. We had an original doctor. I think it was like episode 4, a Navy doctor. I think we used that one. So I think I found some other good ones. This was a good one. I thought you'd get a kick out of it. And we'll talk about it a little bit more with kind of your history as a doctor, an Army doctor. So it says, I am an Army doctor, which means I can break every bone in your body while naming them. And that's from Dr. John Watson. It's not a real doctor, but from, a fictional.
I like it.
Oh, thanks. So good quote. I thought about that.
So a lot of guys have a handle, right? So Psalm 53 is God will scatter the bones of my enemy. So my handle on my uniform was always scattered bones. So everybody had like a cool handle. And so what do you give a doctor, an orthopedic surgeon? So I like that. It's good.
Yeah. And we didn't know that. We didn't know. It's weird how it comes together. I didn't even know that. That's a good one.
Yeah, I like that quote.
So, but yeah, we're joined again. So we've had a couple of doctors on. They've all been Navy doctors. So we have our first Army doctor. So the first real doctor. Sorry, Dan.
Yeah.
Sorry,
Dan.
But Dan did some pretty cool stuff too. Pretty comparable to kind of the stuff that you were doing, working with some JSOC guys. So it's a good thing. So like I mentioned before, it's great to have someone, just because I'm not from Ohio, not a Ohio guy. Grew up in Michigan, so gonna get a lot of boos. Everybody before this was saying, such nice things about Michigan is not normal. That they're just being nice to because of the guests. So, but you grew up in Michigan. Tell us about that.
I did. So yeah, I grew up the youngest of 3 on a small rural dairy farm in Southwest Michigan. Summers were baling hay and working and training for football and sports, and long military history family. Went to a really small school, graduated with 35 kids in my class, and I actually graduated 4th. Out of 35.
What percentile is that?
Not necessarily an academic superstar, but hey, that's how it works, right?
But 35 is small. You still stay in touch with any of the classmates?
2 of my classmates I stay up. I went up last week and did commencement at my local high school. That was kind of a big deal. So I got to give commencement, and I introduced my job as the Ohio State, and I did get booed in front of my own home crowd. So I'm entirely used to that. So it's all right.
So growing up the farm, are you youngest?
Yep, I'm the youngest.
Yep. A lot of work around the farm. Would you say that? When did that start growing up? Is that your whole life, or?
Yeah, you start super early. So my first memory of actually working hard on the farm was my dad did construction as well. So we were putting into McDonald's in the local neighboring town. And so I was driving backhoe, and I was probably 10. And my dad would haul dirt, and I was leveling off the dirt. And some lady stopped and called the cops because she thought kids were unsupervised. And I was 10-year-old running a full, a backhoe on this job site. And this cop came and said, "What's the problem?" I was like, "I don't know." He came and asked me, he said, "I don't know, sir. Hey, I got to keep moving dirt." And I went back to moving dirt. My dad came and they're like, "What's the deal?" And they're like, "Nothing. We're just going to keep going." So some lady was just nosy. But yeah, your summers were full of long work days. And but it was fun. It was a good upbringing, and it was a good experience for sure. Good
hard work. And yeah. Kevin already alluded to it a little bit when he was first talking, is you come from, this is very common with military people, as we've seen, as we've had these episodes, is that there's a lot of family history that with the military. Yours is pretty extensive. So talk a little bit about your family. You're not the first one to serve your country.
No. So my great grandfather was in World War II. He was in the 8th Armor. So he walked from one side of Europe to the other. I sent Shay a picture of him when they had crossed the Rhine. He had finally got a day off, and he was posing next to the Rhine because it was a big deal once we crossed the Rhine. And so I have some of his cool old war pictures and some cool old war memorabilia from him. My grandfather on the Martin side was involved in island hopping towards Japan and had orders for Japan, actually. And then something I just found out, like in the past, I don't know what, 2 weeks, somewhere, that my grandmother, is all these stories. She was actually Rosie the Riveter, not the real person on the picture, but she did that. So when my grandpa left, they had to make money to keep the farm. So she went to work at a local steel mill. And her horror story was that she had this whole big vat. She was 18, this vat of liquid metal, and she would swoop it over top of all these guys on the assembly line and then dump it in a thing and then swing it back over. And she had nightmares about dropping liquid metal on these guys. Can you imagine an 18-year-old girl with a vat of liquid metal above your head? So that's the story that I got fed my whole childhood. And recently I looked it up what the factory was actually called. And no kidding, she was actually making metal in Grand Rapids the metal was actually going to be part of the Manhattan Project that actually saved my grandfather's life, probably.
That's crazy.
So the whole small world, it was crazy. None of us ever put two and two until the power of Google, and it showed us what she had been doing. Other grandpa was in the military, dad was in the Navy. Pretty extensive military background.
And you have a cousin, I think, that's still.
Yep. So my cousin and I were the outcasts in the family, the two that did not want to be farmers or excavators. So we're kind of outcasts, believe it or not. And so my cousin was an F-16 pilot deployed to Iraq. We call it deployed, but he landed in Kuwait and did bombing runs, right? But we'll make fun of the Air Force later. So he did that, and then he got whatever they did. They changed the pilot, and he had to go down to the A-10. So we did some A-10 time, and I think now he's in their reserves, Air Guard in South Bend.
Nice.
Yep.
I think the stories you talk about, the 10-year-old run the backhoe, your mom, your grandmother, liquid metal. I think OSHA, if anyone from OSHA is listening, is like freaking out right now. Like 10-year-old running the backhoe, liquid metal over people's heads. Like that, none of that stuff would be happening. I wonder what would happen today if somebody saw a 10-year-old on a backhoe. I guess some places would still be okay though.
Rural Michigan, you got to do it. Right?
I mean, there is some concern about that. I think your grandmother had a good point.
Yeah,
but I mean, at that point, there was really no. I mean, she didn't burn anybody or melt anybody with steel. So
no, she never had ever happened. But she talks about coming home and being really like stressed out just by that crane. She was always terrible. She's gonna bump the lever and spill some.
So you said you just found that out. What did she just not talk about it, or what?
There's always the stories about grandma hauling metal over everybody's head. So that was a legend. Everybody knew it. Everybody knew grandma. That was her job. She was the farmer's wife that would go out and help bale hay. She would drive tractors. She'd come in filthy dirty with the guys. And, that was post-Depression where they were trying to do everything they could to save the farm. And my grandpa ended up buying 4 farms and gave one to each one of his sons. And so that hard work paid off. And it's truly that American story of my grandpa didn't leave 6th grade. And he was probably a multimillionaire when he died, probably. But his 6th grade education. So,
yeah, it's different. I mean, my dad talked about his foster parents owned a farm. So it's a different life. I think we'll head back there, Dad, for your glory years. We'll send you back out there, work you towards the end of your life. No, but you said you don't want to talk a lot about your family, but you have one of your boys is out there doing a little bit of the same work you did right now, which is pretty exciting. I mean, that must feel good to kind of carry on a little bit of a family tradition.
Yeah, so our Emily and I, when we got married, we decided that we're going to keep that strong bond with our family home. So every summer, no matter where we were moving around the military, they went home to Michigan and spent the summers on my farm and my wife's farm. And that gave them that bond with their grandparents. So no matter where we're in the world, they still see Michigan as home. Even though we've lived in Colorado, Texas, we've been all over the place. Michigan's home to them. So by sending them home, they got that good experience. Like my son was driving that same backhoe today. That's how old my dad's backhoe is, but he was doing that same stuff today.
That must feel good. That's a good legacy to carry on.
Yeah.
So you said obviously big family. You talked about your family history, the military. When did you decide that you were going to join the Army, and then when did that bug hit you, or did you always know? I heard a podcast today about I thought I've been asked this question too before. I always felt I always thought it was calling me more than a choice that I was making. I always thought that I was going to the Army as early as I can remember.
Yeah, no, I totally opposite. So in my family, number 1 was Jesus. Number 2 was the orthopedic surgeon. My uncle had osteogenesis imperfecta. He had a bone disease, so he had hundreds of fractures, literally hundreds of fractures. So I grew up wanting to be nothing but an orthopedic surgeon. It's all I ever wanted to be. No one told me I wasn't that smart, so I was like, crap. So then I was trying to save up money to go to college, and I had sold some 4-H animals, but just had not near enough money. I got accepted to pre-med, And an Army recruiter just called me one day and said, "Hey, oh, you want to be a doctor?" I was like, "Yeah." He goes, "I'll make you a doctor in the Army." I said, "No kidding." He came over. We sat at my kitchen table just like this. He talked about it for 10 minutes, and I was like, "Okay, I'm in." I told my parents. I came home, said I'm joining the Army. Told Emily I'd been dating for years. Said I'm joining the Army. I made the decision up. I was at MEPS 2 weeks later, and I was enlisted by the end of the month. And it was crazy. It just hit me. And that recruiter, he was a local recruiter. Everybody kind of knew him. He wrote it out on a little napkin, literally like a piece of scrap paper. We'll send you. You be a medic first, then a nurse. We'll send you to ROTC. Boom, boom, boom. That's it. He made it sound like it could be this little quick little thing. And I kid you not, people always trash their recruiters. My guy was spot on. Yeah. He sketched it on a piece of paper, and here I am. And I think having that family bond is what made everybody's mind not blow up when I came home one day. The pre-med going to be a doctor guy. He said, "Hey, scratch all that, forget that. I'm going to go be an Army medic."
Right, which is I mean, it's the same but very different, I guess. Yeah. But I can understand. But it is, you do hear stories where recruiters do get a bad name if you're not haven't been in the military. A lot of them have horror stories, but there are a lot of recruiters that have changed people's lives and done great things. So you can't bash all of them that have doing horrible things. But so you started off in 1998, I think, is when you decided to go along with this plan on a napkin.
That's it. Yeah, napkin based.
A lot of things are going back to why you were 10th in the class. No, I'm joking. But,
hey,
no, come on, I'm joking. I'm kidding. But no, so you head down and become a medic.
Yep.
Did you choose that because of where you wanted to go as a doctor, or did he tell you that that's what you were going to do? That was the best route.
No, 100%. So he told me, "Hey, these are the steps you need to do, and that's how you'll get noticed." And it worked. I mean, his whole plan was wonderful. So I became a medic. Graduated second in my class, and they said, "Hey, you should probably just go on. Our next enlisted level is to be an LPN, a licensed practical nurse." I said, "That sounds all right. They make a little bit more money." So I went through immediately into the nursing course. And I was getting back, and I went back to my reserve unit, and I showed up, and I was, private or specialist, whatever. At the end of the last squad, the last guy, some, E6 was bullying me a little bit, whatever. It's okay. Right. So I go to ROTC, like literally then 2 weeks later, and become a cadet. I come back and I score a 350 on my PT test, and my commander goes, "Hey, you're now the platoon leader." So I became the platoon leader of the platoon that I was just getting bullied and picked up.
As an SMP, like that, yeah.
The next week. So I was like, "Oh, crap's going to change now, boys." PT just became part of what we do on reserve weekends.
Jokes on you.
Yeah, jokes on you. Jokes on you.
But so you took a little different route than some people do as doctors. So we talked about before. Kevin, there's another way. There's direct commissionees that some doctors do that. They go to medical school, and then they're either recruited or go to the military after they've already got their degree. A little bit different than what you did. Majority of the doctors I know, it is that direct commission route. So you think that makes you different than some of the other doctors? Because some of the doctors, like I said, I've dealt with, are usually sometimes been. They've been in medicine for 10 years or whatever. Some of them come in right away as a lieutenant colonel. I mean, do you think you're starting off as a enlisted guy in the reserves or OTC? Do you think that helped you, bond a little bit more as a doctor and a soldier? Because you guys are both and gals are both the same.
I think completely, because what it allowed me to do is just to see, have a big dose of humility. I think some of my peers, and for me too, it's being a surgeon, you have to have a certain amount of hubris to do our job and go in and have confidence in your surgery. But having the opportunity during undergrad, when I was doing ROTC, I was married, I was young, had no money. So I was working third shift in a nursing home. I was a charge nurse. I was wiping butt and passing pills to these people at third shift. And I would leave school and I would go straight to ROTC and straight to my classes in the morning, sleep in the afternoon, try to be a husband, and go back again and try to get good grades for pre-med. So I think that dose of humility taught you a little different thing, how you address nurses, how you address your patients. And I think coming in at a service-minded position is where we should come from, instead of so much as you're hiring me and I'm the latest, greatest. More of a, hey, this is a service. You're coming to me because you have a need. And that's what I hope to bring to my practice now. Sometimes I do get a little military and I still get a little knife hand action. I can't lose that.
They love that at the Ohio State.
Yeah, I can't lose that. I'm sorry. That's just part of my blood. But I definitely think having that, the upbringing makes you different.
Yeah, I mean, it's not a bad thing. I think it's one of those things. If you're in, you understand it. You understand the specialty people, and the doctors are always. But it is one of those things where, like, the pictures I posted, like, Kevin is by far the most decked out, whoest doctor I've ever seen. Like, usually I've seen doctors that aren't even wearing T-shirts. Their name tags. Well, the one picture you had no name tags, so you couldn't mess those up as a doctor. But sorry, but it is a different, it is always different to have, because the doctors aren't the only ones, you have chaplains the same way. And it's always, for me, it was always the people that were easiest to bond with were the people that had prior military experience, that were, like we had a doctor or a PA that was at Fort Bragg was, an E7 before, and special forces medic. It was like, okay, that's a nice, he knows what everyone's going through and kind of relates a little bit easier to the patients that they're working with. Because you would admit that, you're at the Ohio State now, right?
Yep.
You've been 25 years in the military.
Yep.
The military patients are pretty unique, I would say, right? Or challenging. What would you call a military patient? How would you describe?
It's interesting because they're the same. Their needs are just so much different because my patients now have a couple different kinds, right? I want to get back to pickleball, like that's their whole priority in life, or they may struggle with obesity. Whereas my soldiers, they need to be able to get back to. I took my last duty station was Fort Carson, taking care of infantry guys, and then 10th group. And they need to say, hey, sir, it's like right now I ask people, what's your expectations? Oh, I want to be able to walk to the mailbox. A soldier, what's your expectations? Yeah. Well, I want to go to EFMB in 3 weeks. I want to go to Jump Master in like a month. And they're like, wow, that is
no.
Yeah, that's like, no, like that can't happen. Like, I think I'm pretty good, but that is, the goals are so hard. And the time frame is so short because, in the military, you get a profile, and they'll throw you out. I tell people if I fix your Achilles, you're different for 9 months. That's enough to get thrown out of the military.
Yeah.
So the expectations are very high.
So yeah, there's a question I wrote it down, but we, as we're bringing it back, it deals with patients. So you have, 20 years at war. The medical, not only has war fighting changed, but also dealing and treating, military casualties changes a lot since the 20 years. Like what do you think is the key factor as a doctor now? You see like some of these high performing, not even high, a lot of service members who have really devastating or traumatic injuries, lose a leg or some horrible things that these people are in, it's not overnight like you see in the movies, but a lot of these guys and gals get themselves back into the fight. What do you think? What do you think is a combination of that? Is it just all the advances of medicine, or is it also the individuals that are doing it? Do you think there's something different about those people that say, "Hey, I've got my leg blown off"? Like you said, I don't want to walk to the mailbox.
The biggest shift that I saw was, of course, we're all affected by it. Is 9/11. So pre and post 9/11, medicine was different in my mind. Post 9/11. When the whole country and then Bush brought in all the money for the Center for the Intrepid at Brooke Army Medical Center. And the whole way we rehabbed these guys and gals was so much more advanced and so much more science-based. Let's throw money at it. So the government just threw billions of dollars at it. So if you get a leg blown off, we will get you a Blade Runner leg, a titanium ankle that lets you run. We'll get you back climbing walls. We'll use the best technology. There's bar none. We will figure out the best technology and a way to get you back. And I think that was the difference. And the service members knew that. The service members knew their country was behind them and was going to support them. So your willingness to go to fight for a country that's not going to abandon you and the country that's going to spare no penny to get you back to being who you are is incredible. And I think that was the difference in medicine. And I can see that in my career, how it shifted. Yeah,
it is crazy because I remember, I can't remember what year it was, but I was at Bragg, and there was a guy who had been, I guess he was with the Golden Knights there, but he had been in a parachute accident and lost his leg and was running down, doing PT on the leg. And this was pre 9/11. And that was like the craziest, like we were shocked. And I remember all the NCOs were yelling about how this one-legged guy was outrunning a bunch of people. But then, now it's changed so much now where you see there's like double amputees that remain on active duty. There's not only are they, they're not doing parachute things, but these guys are kicking indoors somewhere right now, missing limbs. And yeah, there's definitely, we've had, guests that, lost his legs and you are right. The technology that he has and those legs to get back to the best he can in his life. Right. Some people may never get back. Not everyone can always do that. But I feel like how much is that individual, the soldier? I mean, you deal with the civilians. Is it something different about them? What do you think gets somebody from, hey, I got my leg blown off? Not, there's the pity party, but then there's a part of like, hey, doc, what can we do to get me back out there? What do you think is driving that soldier that you've dealt with?
It just comes from their inner willingness to serve. A full military of volunteers makes a big difference, right? So these guys volunteered to serve their country. And the best thing I can think of offhand, so I took care of 10th Special Operations Group at Fort Carson. And one of my specialties I do is I fix the ligaments in your ankle when you sprain your ankle too much. So this guy was spraining his ankle. I fixed his ankle. He's like, hey, sir, I'm deploying like right away. He deployed literally weeks after surgery, which is crazy. He deployed. He came back, and I thought he was coming back for a normal post-op check. It was only like 6 months. I I've seen him on my schedule. He came in, and I walked in, and there was a prosthesis sitting there. And I was like, oh, what the heck? And he goes, hey, sir, I just want to apologize. You fixed my ankle, and it was great. An IED blast took that dang thing off, and I'm sorry, sir. He told me sorry for losing his repair that I had done. That's what he told me. And this dude was sincere as heck. We were both kidded, and I was like, oh, man, you lost. How can you lose that? And like we kind of had that bond that you would never have. You know, that would be I'm sure I'd be wrote up at Ohio State for saying something like that. How do you lose my work, you know? But he had that dedication, and he just had that will. And he's like, how do you think about my other ankle? And I'm like, hey, man, we'll get to that. Maybe we fix it. Maybe we don't. But I don't never forget how he was like, I think he was really sorry that he lost what I had done. And he was never complained, never said a word. That guy was so stoic, and just that. And some of my patients now, they have a little bit of a bunion. Sorry if I fixed your bunion. It's 10 out of 10. It's 12 out of 10 pain. Right? I hear that all the time. Something's 12 out of 10 pain, and I struggle with that.
But I've been learning that when you leave some things, like everybody's pain is different. So that may be their level 10 pain.
Yes.
Everyone's different. You know, I heard that today. You can't compare grief. You can't compare pain. All those
Keep
things.
reminding me
You know,
of that.
his wife is over there going like no, no, but it is different. I kind of like threw that to you as like a softball, like a big beach ball. Because I feel like that is. I know so many guys that were like that. You know, one of my good friends was in a bad aircraft crash, and I think he spent years trying to get that fixed so he could get back in the fight, and then even contemplated getting it amputated to do that. I'm glad he didn't. But I don't, he's out there, Pete. It was a good decision, I think, to keep your leg. But it is crazy to watch and see those people that, like you said before, they just want to get back and do what they were doing before. And it's amazing to see what your field is doing to do that. It blows my mind what, you see guys pull up their uniform and they're missing a leg and they're doing some of these, amazing things still. So thank you for that. Yeah, I'm sure a lot of people owe you that. Thanks. We went forward quick though. So it's up to you.
Well, that's kind of the reason why I went into foot and ankle. So I do foot and ankle as my subspecialty. People ask you, why do you do feet? Do you like feet? You got a foot fetish? No, absolutely not. And I don't like feet at all. But as a
if you said yes, I was going to judge you hard.
As a medic, I was growing up, and I was non-deployable for my first probably 14 years of service. Almost because I was in school. And I kept seeing these IED blasts, and I saw how good these guys were doing. I saw the post 9/11. So the whole reason I went into foot and ankle surgery was to be that person. I wanted to influence that group that you're talking about right now. That's the whole reason. There's no other reason. Foot and ankle is not that cool. It doesn't reimburse that well. It's not the money maker, but that's the whole entire reason, because I wanted to make sure that those guys coming home were getting the best. And I thought, hey, I think I can be that best, and I can be that guy. And so here I am, foot and ankle surgeon.
And still still loving feet apparently, but that's a whole different.
Trying
episode.
to save them.
That's a whole different. Saving 1 foot at a time, I guess. 1 foot at a
time.
But so talk about a little bit like your process is a long time before you're actually a doctor. Like it's just like anything else. It's no different than the military. You graduated from Western Michigan University.
Go Broncos.
Then you got your doctorate in Lake Erie College.
Yep.
Which is my son's up that way, Gannon.
Is it? Yeah, Gannon's right next door. Even that's a funny story. Look, I tell you that story.
Okay, right? You can tell any story you want. You have the form. It's all you.
So I come in, right, and I'm not Mr. Test Taker guy. That's 4th out of 35 at my public school, right? So my advisor at Western Michigan said, I don't think you should apply for med school. I was like, oh, great. So Emily and I saved up money, and each application to med school is like $250. You got to travel, you got to fly, you got to get there. The kids now apply to 80, 90 schools. I saved up enough money to apply to 4. Right, 4.
So kids are really applying that many schools.
They will take loans. They will take loans, and they will fly all over the country and interview at hundreds of schools. Hundreds. Some of them are hundreds. Literally every med school. I had enough money for 4, so I could drive to Erie, Pennsylvania. Emily actually had to work, so I went with my mom to my interview to med school. So I walk in, and I have a very average test score. I have very average grades. I have below average everything. I walk in, I sit down, and I say, this is one of the best memories of my life of talking about how God's hand works in different things. I sit down, I'm in uniform. At that point, I was Lieutenant E4. I'm not sure what I was. I sat down and I would shake the first guy's hand. He had a ponytail. I thought, oh, crap. And he goes, hey, Vietnam, so-and-so. Yes, sir. Next guy, he was a early Gulf War veteran. Doctor. Yes, sir. Third one, another veteran. There's 4 people on my panel. Veteran. The last lady, she looked at me and she looked like, some probably worked in a lunch lady line kind of lady. So she looked like that nice, sweet Midwest lady. She goes, yeah, my dad died in Vietnam. Thank you for your service. I sat down and I was like, yes. I was like, yes. And it was the best interview. And they said, they said, hey, this is, I think this is the place for you. I said, I'm already married. I'm all in. I don't have any kids. My wife and I are here to be the best doctors we can be. And to go back in the military, I said, hey, I'm taking the scholarship. So your training to me is actually going to be a gift to these active duty guys. It's not going to be something I take back to my small town. It's something I'm going to go right into active duty with. And I think that was something that hit home with them is training military physicians. So if any of you are out there, if you're into training, if you can train a service member, think about the impact that has not only on that person, but how it has a trickle down effect. And I ended up using that mantra at interviews the rest of my life too. Like, hey, if you train me, I'm going to have this impact on all these service members. And that's been something I've used repeatedly, and not me use to leverage, but it really does make a difference to people. And you know that when you invest teaching in somebody, they're going to take that, and that gift that you give them as that knowledge is going to be used in such a cool way.
So you mentioned scholarship. So was the military paying for you to go to medical school?
Oh yeah, I didn't pay for it.
Yeah, so that's
thank you, taxpayers. I have not paid for a penny of my own school. 13 years of training, essentially.
Right. Yeah. And that's normal. Like, if you qualify for the program, you meet it. So obviously, the military had seen something in you to do that. It was just your obligation to get into med school, right?
Obligation to get med school, and then also residency. Right. So orthopedics is usually the top 8% can get into orthopedics. That's an art story. So at a DO school, their 3rd and 4th year in med school doesn't necessarily keep that close of tabs on you. If you do away rotations, they call it. So you get to go to hospitals and do surgery. So at William Beaumont in Texas, you could actually live on the floor with the patients in this little off the cuff. You're on the same floor with all your patients. And I actually went there and lived for a month. And the colonel, he's like, aren't you a doctor? Or aren't you here? Aren't you one of my residents? I was like, no, sir, I'm just a med student. No. I went home. I came back and I did another 30 days living in that same room. The colonel and the second charge, they thought I was already a resident because I was putting in so many hours that they didn't know that I wasn't a resident. They didn't pay attention. They had no idea. And so I went to interview with my now one of my mentors and one of my best mentors in my life. And he sat down, he looked at me. He's a West Point guy. He goes, Kevin, everybody here loves you. You're the hardest working. But you know what? He looked me in the eye and he goes, you're very average. Speaking my age, I'm like, you remember the movie Dumb and Dumber when he was trying to flirt with the girl and she said, you had like a one in them. Yes. And she's like, you got one chance. So I left that interview. I called him. I was like, I got a chance. He said, I'm average. That means I'm somewhere in the middle. I got a chance. Right?
I'm still not the worst.
I'm still not the worst, but he hired me. So I went and spent 5 years in, the armpit of Texas in El Paso, Fort Bliss.
But you hear that, that not to downgrade what you did, but there's a lot of people, you hear that a lot in the military. I feel like over the years, I've heard a lot of people that, not the smartest. Don't get me wrong. There are a lot of really smart people in the military that could probably do anything they want. But there is a lot of people in the military that, a lot of people said they're average or whatever, but that's only fueled the fire. And they just use that to get better at what they do. It's always funny to see that you can tell somebody, you're not the greatest. In the military, they tell you that. That's one of the, I miss that about the military, because the military will tell you, counseling, they will tell you where you stand, for the most part. You got to be careful, what you ask for, because that profession, they can tell you exactly what they think of you. And that's one of the things about when you get this film where they do that, but it's kind of a little bit more politically correct is the way to put it. But there's a lot of people, I think, that use that I'm average to either
get better,
get a chance to, to prove people wrong. So evidently are you still average down? Hopefully it got better. It has to go up from there. I'm kidding. But
well, I like I still try to use the line, and my kids even know it and they have it memorized, but I'll never forget when I enlisted, I showed up at Fort Leonard Wood for basic training. And this huge drill sergeant walks up to me and he's, knife handed me and he goes, Private Martin. I had no rank. I had nothing, right? Of course, came in. And he said, there's this huge ocean. There's this little snail in the bottom of that ocean. And I was thinking, man, I'm a cute little snail. This is awesome. That's what that's what I am in life. And he goes, that little snail turns his ass and he takes a big shit. And I was like, underneath that shit is a thin layer of slime. That is you, Private Martin. So that is the epitome of how you said people will tell you where you're at. And, you knew where you're at. And so I think you're right. Sometimes people need to tell you, because some of the people that I teach now, they come in, they've been the top person in their class at everything they've ever done, 1 or 2 everywhere, the best schools. Yeah. And they've never been told they're average. And you tell them they're average and their mind blows, right? No one's ever said, hey, you're okay at surgery. Like, what? I'm okay? Like, yeah, you're not the best. You're 100% not the best. And they're like, whoa. So I think understanding and always fighting from the underdog position is an underutilized tactic.
Yeah, to being humble. I think the military, when you talk about the basic training story, that's everywhere. That's the military does break you down no matter who you are, because there's a lot of people, like you said in that class, that everybody chose to serve, and then you get there and they want to break everybody down, because like you said, even some kid who you could have been the captain of a swim team or captain of the football team or whatever For sure. And, the top of what they've been doing now, that's not what they want. They want everybody equal to build up, the organization. I think that's one of the key things about the military. That's one of the things I hope they never change as we get out, that they still do humble people and keep them, you start off, everybody started off as that slime, some people even lower or whatever, but you hopefully work your way out of the ocean.
Yeah, that's right.
Or maybe a bird that swoops down and takes the snail. I don't know how it works with that. I've never heard that one. That's a good one, though. Yeah. That's a good one.
But it's back to your question. So hopefully I've worked my way out of that. So that's one of the pictures I sent you. It was Mark Pallis, a mentor of mine, and Jack McBride, another mentor. So in the medical field, they do select the top 10% of all physicians that have ever served in the military, the O2M3 program. And I got in that, and I thought that was finally my checkbox that I'm probably hopefully not that snail anymore, that I've made it to snail level at least.
And Kevin selects use a lot of acronyms. So it's the Order of Military Medical Merit, and he was awarded that in 2017. So I did have that written down. So what did that, I didn't know a lot about, how you started off as average, but running slave labor at, 10 years old on the backhoe and everything like that. But like how did that feel at 2017 to be awarded, knowing how you started off, not having to fight to get where you're at to get that award? It had to mean a great deal to you and also your family. What did you feel like when you got that award? Because that's a pretty big award.
Yeah, I think it was a very kind of busy, crazy time, because I'd already gotten accepted into Joint Special Operations Command Medicine. And so I'd been doing that. I already had a deployment or two underneath my belt at that point. And then to have that be I don't want to say the crown, but to have somebody finally confirm, hey, you're doing the right thing. You're on the right trajectory was nice. And to be able to stand in front of your peers and be like, hey, this is so it was a big deal. And the best thing was one of my mentors, Mark Pallis, gave me that award. He presented that, and kind of like they call it robing, you put your medal on. And it was a big deal because he was my mentor in Joint Special Operations, who got me in essentially and kind of got me going down that path. So it's good that mentorship, I think, is often sometimes lost too in medicine and just the world in general. You need that mentor, that person to guide you and to say, hey, hey, you did it. Nice job. Here's you're welcome to the cool kid club. Here you go. And then also to whisper in your ear, hey, this isn't the end of it. Like, you got to keep going.
Right.
Getting this cool medal, but that doesn't mean stop. That means keep progressing, keep influencing soldiers, and keep pushing.
Right. Mentorship is pretty big in the military. I think everybody, if you talk to, there's a mentor that they had, that's someone that, kept them in the boundaries. That, told them, shared the good knowledge. The good mentors I always felt like they let you push the boundaries, like let you get yourself in enough trouble. They might pull you back. Sometimes they don't even let you pull you back. They let you get yourself in trouble and then kind of, talk about it after that. So do you feel like, is there a mentorship program in the civilian medicine, or is it different between the type of brotherhood or sisterhood with the military doctors and the civilian doctors? I think
it's harder now because what mentorship takes. Number one thing, it takes time. It takes time. So I have I always call them my minions, a small group of medical students or residents that work on research publications with me. But it takes time because you're going to get an email from Dr. Martin at 10:30 at night and like, where's my project? Like, you told me to be done, and I told you on the 14th of June it's due. Like, I didn't mean like the 15th of June, I meant the 14th of June. And like, that same thing of like boundaries. And then also when they screw up or something, you're going to be there to talk to them. And hey, can you call this person? And it's that time, it's that 30-minute phone call on a Sunday evening when you're just trying to sit down and this kid calls you and goes, what school should I apply to? And you spend 30 minutes on the phone. And I think that's one thing people are not willing to give right now, and that's time.
Yeah. And I think that's on both ends. It's the mentee and the mentor. Yeah. It's a hard thing. It definitely involves a lot of work and understanding between both of them. And I say that for everybody that's out there, because there's a lot of different people that listen and have different walks of life. But I think you could have a mentor, and probably anything you do, you can look for someone that's, that's in your job or your profession that's been doing it for a while that can help you along the way. And that goes to people that are up there that have been around for a while. I'm 50. I've been doing a lot of things. I've always, I do want to share my experiences with people, but it is funny to do that. When you start talking to other people about it, the mentee that you think would be a person, you find out really quickly they're like, oh no, I'm good. You know what I mean? I don't want to put the extra time into it, which, I say, being a mentee is just as important as being a mentor, you know what I mean? But it definitely needs, that time is made up for in the long run, in my opinion.
And that's kind of how I got a couple months ago. I got invited to give grand rounds, visiting professor at Harvard, Mass Gen in Boston, and the program director out there they have probably 3 of the best foot and ankle surgeons probably in the world. So I was like, oh man, I'm getting invited to speak foot and ankle, and the guy goes, no, we don't want to talk about that. He goes, we need leadership out here. We need to have these residents who are the most gifted people on earth to hear it. So I gave a leadership talk. And to kind of, like you're saying, to put their, to show them some hard things and talk to them about hard things and mentorship and how to be a good leader and not abuse your position, but also build them up. And so that was one of the interesting things I have done recently with that same group of people that were kind of academically gifted, but needed a little bit of knife hand.
Yeah, they're like, hey, they already know more about foot. No, they're smart. They went to no, I'm kidding. But I mean, that's important. I think it is I mean, especially in your role. I mean, it's not all of them are going into military medicine, which I think it's different. I mean, you're the first person. I don't have to tell you that. It's very different, the type of people you're looking at. You're still a soldier. You have to have military bearing. You are a leader. I mean, people do look at you, and you are in charge of people, those positions that you're in charge of soldiers. You're in charge of the doctors. So it is important. Yeah. Leadership is everywhere. It's not I still think the military is the best way to learn leadership and all the different schools and experiences, and it's one of those invaluable leadership
for sure
labs to live in. You know what I mean? So
they know how to do it
for the most part. Yeah, I think so. So talk about that. You talked about a couple of different places. So you leave Lake Erie College with your DO, then you headed down to William Beaumont Army Medical, which is a beautiful. Oh, is it El Paso?
It's El Paso.
That's what I thought. Yeah. Okay.
I actually lived on the south side, the south side of the Rio Grande. You can actually live in America on the south side of the Rio Grande, right where it turns into New Mexico. Yeah. That's right where I live.
I've visited there a couple times. It's not, right across there is a great city.
Yeah, we weren't allowed to go there.
No, I don't think it's not a great place to go. But
when I showed up, it was the middle of the border war, or the cartel wars were going on. Right. Remember when there was like heads on spigots and stuff like that? I was down there for that. So my very first night on call as a resident. So when you're a resident, you had first year an intern, second year you're officially an orthopedic surgeon and can be on call. You literally had 0 experience. At a level 1 trauma center, you're the person. So my very first night, this drug cartel guy was in Juarez, and he had an armored vehicle, but he forgot to close the window. And so somebody walked up and they shot him 16 times in his window and then threw a hand grenade in. As he got it down to the floorboard, and I'm sure it's some World War II hand grenade because it only blew off his left leg and part of his right leg. And then his friends, if you love somebody down there, you throw them over the wall. So they took him to the border and threw him over the wall. They called our ambulance, brought him to the hospital. And so here I am, one day on the job. What do I do with this? But what great training for years to come, though. Being able to take care of himself. El Paso was a blessing in disguise. It was a great place to train.
So what year were you there? What years? 13 to
08 to 13.
Okay. So a little while that was, and is that where it started the family then, obviously? Is that, or a little bit later?
It kind of was all over. So all of my kids were born in different states. So I had one in Pennsylvania, one in Texas, and one in Michigan.
He's looking at that like, I can't remember. He's like, help me out.
Don't ask me birthdays.
No, I'm the same way, but that's we talked about that before one time. Mine are 3 different states as well. Yeah. So New York, North Carolina, and Kentucky. The Kentucky kid's got to be my favorite, though. Come on, whiskey, Kentucky. No, I'm kidding. But yeah, I mean, it's different. So you're down there at El Paso. You're getting your feet wet as a doctor, getting challenges like that. What was that was? And you weren't? Did you deploy at any time there, or were you still stuck at the hospital at that time?
I was still stuck at the hospital. So I was a resident, so we couldn't deploy. We couldn't do anything. So that was your time just to become an orthopedic surgeon. So it's a 5-year program, and just trying to figure out how to do that, how to be a surgeon, how to break all those bones and then put them back together.
Right.
Yeah.
And then from there you head to
University of Iowa. So I went to the University of Iowa, and that's where I had used that kind of, hey, the impact you're going to leave on somebody. So one of the best foot and ankle surgeons or sports surgeons probably in the world, Ned Amendola, was there at Iowa. And he's currently the team physician at Duke. So when you see all these Duke athletes get hurt, Ned Amendola is taking care of them. And so I hit him up on an email one day. Or no, it's not what I did. He came to Society of Military Orthopedic Surgeons. Some of these guys give back their donation, and they go and they speak at our military conventions. And I met him there. I said, hey, can we have a cup of coffee? And it was in San Diego. We went out and sat on the back veranda, and we had a cup of coffee, and I just talked to him for probably an hour. And I said, hey, I'm going to keep in touch with you. And I would send him an email once a month. I put it on my phone once a month for like the next year, staying in touch with him. And so when you apply, I sat down on a table, and there were 16 people, all in suits, for one spot. And I'm in my uniform. And I walk in. He's like, hey, Kevin, gives me a big handshake, pulls me aside, says, hey, this guy's coming to me first. Pulls me aside. I'm in my interview. I'm in there 5 minutes. And he goes, hey, let's just stop. And I was like, what? He goes, just stop. I stand up. He walks to the next room, grabs the other attending, and grabs all the foot and ankle attending, pulls me in the room and say, we're taking Kevin. Tell these other guys, just be polite. And this gets over. We got to get to lunch. And so it was that kind of interview. Because we had talked about it. I said, hey, one thing, I'm free to you. The military is going to pay me to be here. Second of all, the input you're going to leave on the country with your gift to me is my education. And he ate that up, completely. But that same guy, though, his mentorship, like we're talking about, didn't stop at that time. So he's also the same guy. After he got to Duke, I had finished, I went to Bragg and I'd finished SEER school. I'd lost about 15 pounds and I was like, sucking a little bit, but it was kind of during basketball season. So I was like, hey, I want to go to a Duke basketball game, sit right behind so we went, we go to a game, and afterwards he's like, tell me about what you've been doing. I was like, well, I can't tell you much, but I got locked in this little teeny box and I didn't eat much. And I told him, I said, hey, I didn't eat a lot. Actually, I lost like 15 pounds. And he's like, okay. So he orders me an entree, then orders me a second entree, and he kept bringing food at the table. And I was like, I'm not sure if I should eat like this. I don't know if I get to go, something wrong with me. But and I gave him a flag from my first deployments, and it was just that mentorship that didn't stop.
Right.
He kept investing in me.
But so at SEER school, you jumped ahead to that one. You got to talk about now that you brought it up. A lot of it is unclassified, so you don't have to. I mean, you can't. Yeah. I know there are some things that's a school that they do teach some techniques that you're not supposed to share, but the school itself, what they do, so it's a pretty intense school at Fort Bragg. Yep. How many days is it again?
Everybody's a little different. So I did the one for JSOC. I didn't do the standard special ops. We did the special one, the JSOC one, and then I think they also treated this different as docs because the small box people kept coming out with nerve injuries. Right. Like they get in there too long and they can't work their hands. And they're like, hey, we invested like $1 million in these guys. We can't break their hands.
Oh, yeah, we can't break their hands.
We can't break their hands. So like we got put in.
They're like, hey guys, who is the guy who broke the surgeon's hand?
Yeah. Yes. Exactly.
You're fired.
Yes.
No.
Yeah. So there was different tactics that they used, but it was mine was I think somewhere around 3 weeks, maybe something like that. And it was like anybody else, it was just how do you survive and the tactics. And I think a lot of times the medicine part was interesting because this was a lot more, a couple of days they pulled us aside and they had us get interviewed, and they had, like for me, they had read my bio, which is online. So that's what's easy to find. And I had some scientists supposedly interviewing me, right. And trying to mind boggle, get in there and crack my nut that way. So that was some different things.
So the school is to prepare somebody if they were to become a prisoner of war and kind of teach the techniques for them to survive and in captivity is a way to do it and not to, give up. But it's an interesting school. If you talk to anybody that's been there, they do find out things about you. The instructors use that against you to try to see if they can break you. And it's one of the only schools where they actually use physical punishment and things for the school. So it's always interesting when you see a friend come back from that school when you're at Bragg. You feel bad from it. Yeah, you need to drink a lot of beer and then just to hear the stories, you're like, holy cow, there's some really good stories I've heard along about what they do and how, because there's a different thing, because they do look at your online bio and use all that stuff against you. It's a pretty interesting school.
I never realized how hard a grown man can slap you.
Yeah. What's the rule? They can't go any further than the rules. There's a rule they can't punch you, but they can open hand to a certain thing. And they do hit you.
And in the first part, like, you're expecting it. So like the first, phase or whatever, you're expecting to get hit and you're like kind of ready for it. So the one that I remember the most is like, we're almost done. We're literally like a day and we're like, no one's hit me in like a week. This is, we're on the edge. And at one point I did something like that. And out of the blue came this hit, stars, the whole 9 yards. And I stumbled, I'm picking myself back up. And I was like, okay, we are still in training. Like, turn back the dial back on. Like, we're still in training. So yeah, they know how to keep you focused.
Yeah. I remember a friend of mine told a story that there was a guy who, he was the senior guy. So they run it fairly like you have senior people, even though you're captive, that you're responsible for them. Yeah. And they had a Ranger battalion guy that kept volunteered to take punishment when everybody was messing up. And they said they brought him back one time and just basically said to them, like, he doesn't take punishment anymore. And they said that the kid was completely broken. I mean, not physically, but just physically and mentally. But they were like, he's done. Like, somebody else needs to do it. But they said, it was interesting school. He wanted to do it 5 times, and you just, and you've been to the school, so you know what I'm talking about.
One's enough.
Yeah. But I mean, to take I could imagine that's kind of crazy. But so that school, like you said before, we'll get to the JSOC part. I think that's what everybody loves to hear about, all the special forces. You say JSOC, that's what everybody gets all excited about. That's always the big thing. You hear about it. But you finish up at Iowa. Mm-hmm. So where do you head? Is that where you head out to JSOC after that, or did you? Where'd you
briefly? So I went straight to Fort Carson, Colorado. Okay. And so I arrived there as the only foot and ankle surgeon they've had. At that point, 10th Special Operations Group was still sending all their foot and ankle patients up to Vail, to Steadman Hawkins, which is a big name clinic. And so I had a lot of bonds to build there, and tell those guys, hey, like, I'm here, I can take care of your patients, I can get you back up to high speed. So that was a good experience to grow as a physician. Grow my family, put down roots, and then I deployed multiple times. Like, in those first, I was there 6 years, and I deployed every other year the whole time I was there.
So your deployments to all to Afghanistan at that point, or?
I started off in Africa. Okay. So I was in Africa, Djibouti area, and then Afghanistan, then Iraq, Syria. Yep. All under the JSOC veil, but. And the funny thing, everybody's interested about the special operations part, and that was part of my speech recently, because it's the paradigm and the salesmanship of a position. If you were to walk up to a soldier and say, hey, I'm going to take you, I'm going to lock you in a cage, I'm going to beat the crap out of you, I'm going to deploy you repeatedly, you're not going to see your family as much, and you don't get any extra pay for it, you don't get anything extra, half the stuff you do you can't tell anybody about, the medals you've earned you probably won't get, don't worry about it, you don't even need those. Who's going to sign up for that job? Like, nobody.
A lot of people do, though.
No, you know why they do, though? Because it's called special.
Yeah.
Joint special operations. The paradigm that you make that job, you make it out, and I'm glad we do it. And that's why people want to do it, right? They can't get surgeons to volunteer to be on the team, because when you join the team that I was on, you have to be willing to do surgery in a mud hut. You don't have sterile stuff. It's like, what do you got in your backpack, MacGyver? Here, ready, set, go. It's a big difference. So they have a really hard time recruiting surgeons, because it's they just won't do it.
They're like, no, I'm going to stay here at Walter Reed. It's nice here.
Yeah, they're like, hey, I'm moonlighting in Nebraska. I'm making $6,000 a weekend, and you want me to go to where? And like, I can't tell you where. No thanks.
I'm not doing that. No.
Yeah.
What are you talking about? You get extra pay. You get family separation pay. You get, that's big bucks. I mean, come on, you get, tax free. It's big bucks. It's, that's the way to do it. No. Yeah. So there's not a lot of money in any of that. I was just looking at the pay scale about the military pay scale. I kind of, I got commissioned in '94, so it's and like I thought I made a lot of money then, and then I was like, look at what you're making now. I'm like, oh my god, it's crazy. Yeah. How little, not even a commission officer makes, but even an enlisted person. I was like, holy cow, I haven't looked at that in probably 10 years.
Yeah.
It's there's not a lot of money in the military.
We'll put it this way. So my physician assistants that work for me now at Ohio State make equivalent to what I made 3 years ago as a board certified orthopedic foot and ankle surgeon. There's 6,000 of us in America, and the PAs at Ohio State made the same or a little bit more than I made. That's what people should know about their tax dollars. Like, that is a crying shame
Yeah, yeah.
And they did pay for my med school, so thank you. I get that, but even when you add that in,
Well, no, that is special. That's not for everybody. I mean, that's not the case for everyone. They do. I mean, they do. There are some other benefits of it. You know, the retirement is great. The retirement pay. You know, the education. We talked about some of the VA benefits are wonderful. Those are things that you really can't. You can't put a price on them, but they really do help with some of the things. Somebody told me that the lower things on the lower enlisted, like a private, they're like, oh, you don't have to pay for anything. Everything's given to you. I'm kind of like, you obviously have never experienced that, so it's not. That's the easy answer to say, but that's not really how it goes down. They have you still got to have a car most of the time. You don't want to eat the mess hall every day. So They definitely have to live as well. So we went 50 minutes before we start getting into deeper stuff. We have to talk about the first featured whiskey which you brought.
Okay.
Kept up with the military theme with Horse Soldier. We haven't highlighted that yet, but most of the people that are military people have heard of Horse Soldier. It's actually, the distillery's name is the American Freedom Distillery, and it's actually located in St. Petersburg, Florida. It was founded by three former U.S. Special Forces soldiers from ODA 595, Scott Neal, John Coco, and I think John Coco's wife was also one of the founders as well, and then Mark Nutch, I always mispronounce his name, but the ODA 595 was made famous in a movie played by Thor, you've probably seen it, but they were the first ODA team that went into Afghanistan on horseback. Their clandestine mission was the first time that U.S. service members went to war on horseback since I think like World War II. I think it was the 12-man Green Beret team, and then we found out lately. I just found out in the past month the CIA team as well was with them. This ODA was from the 5th Special Forces Group. They later became known as Horse Soldiers. It's a famous statue you can see in the logo as we posted it. It's on the bottles, but that's actually the America's Response Monument, which is at Liberty Park at the World Trade Center. So that's a monument after them. But these gentlemen decided to start the bourbon journey in 2014. They came up with Horse Soldier. Right now, their brand is actually distilled here in Columbus, Ohio, at Middle West Spirits. There is a plan to move it to Kentucky here. I think they're building like a $200 million facility down in Kentucky to get the route to get back to the roots, because a lot of them spent a lot of time in Kentucky when they were in the military. So what's great about the Horse Soldier juice, anytime you buy it, a small portion of everything that they sell goes towards maintaining that America's Response Monument at the World Trade Center. So we're going to have the Horse Soldier barrel strength you brought along. This is non-age stated. It's 122 proof, a big hitter. I like it. That's good. And this mash bill, it's a high wheat bourbon. So it's 70% corn, 20% wheat, and 10% malted barley. So we've got some other bottles up here that we'll try here, but they've been around for a little bit. It's one of those. It's a great story. And I think the older stuff is better. We talked about as whiskey nerds too. You want more?
No, that's good. That's
okay. You're doing better than that before. You're slowing down on me. It's all right now. But no, thanks for bringing that. It's a great story to do that. There's like I said, it's a great brand, and that they give back to something, and it's a great story. If you haven't heard about it, you should definitely research it. Those guys are pretty amazing, amazing group of guys. And then if you haven't seen the movie, I'm always surprised that one of the guys on the board, Nate, he doesn't watch any war movies. We're trying to get him to this. So have you seen this one?
I haven't.
Oh my God. He kills me. Sorry, everybody. I knew he didn't. He hasn't even seen. We were talking about Black Hawk Down.
Oh,
Nate,
you're not going to publish.
I am going to say this, like, publicly shame Nate Levy. You can get on his Facebook and find him, but he has not watched Black Hawk Down. I don't know.
We'll talk about that in a minute.
It'll be. We're trying to shame him into watching these movies, but we like him innocent though. He's not watching it, which is good. Maybe he's just staying innocent. We need to definitely get him on the game. So, but thanks for bringing that. These are I've had several of these buys. My dad was actually talking about when this first came out. Gosh, it was around that time, 2015 or so. He was grabbing all the bottles out of Florida before they went national. So, thank you. So we're back into it. We were talking about JSOC. Everyone wants to talk about that.
Okay.
We I feel like everybody does, right? I'm giving you a hard time, but no, you did some pretty interesting things. So not that you didn't up until that point, because I think what you were doing, I mean, out at Carson, and then committing to all the school and taking care of.
Got a couple patents in there.
Yeah. Do you want to talk about the patent now? Oh,
it's a good time.
Is it now the patent, or do we wait a little bit?
I think it's now.
So one of the things when I first met Kevin is he talked about a patent. So if everybody knows what a patent is, what you don't want to do, and Kevin's going to be to explain what is, you do not want to create a patent when you're in the military, because it doesn't work out well for the person who does it. So I looked it up. You said some stuff there, so I'm trying to think. I got to find where my note was. I had it in here. What the exact
fast cast?
It's one-step spray. That's what it's called?
Yeah. So one-step spray on foam cast. We had, Emily and I had lived in pretty shabby houses and like 16 by 80 trailers that were repossessed. And so instead of fixing everything with duct tape, I became known as the guy that could fix everything with spray foam. So if there's a leak somewhere, you spray foam it. Your trailer is too cold, you spray foam it. You have an old, 200-year-old house in Erie, Pennsylvania. What do you do when it's cold? You spray foam some cracks or something, right? So we're at the kitchen table one time, and she looked at me and goes, "You can fix anything with spray foam." And I was like, that would be a great splint. So literally I run to Lowe's that night, and I come home and I saran wrap her arm, and I spray her down with great stuff, the stuff at Lowe's. And like, oh, this made a big mess. It stained the kitchen. It was a horrible idea. I got online, started finding some other stuff. And then after that, I was like, okay, the saran wrap's not good. I just got to spray this on you. The package says like never touch human skin. Never.
Emily, we are going to be rich from this, okay?
never breathe it, never touch it. Put on a spacesuit and you're doing it. I'm like, hey, I think that's all hype. I'm just going to spray this on your leg.
Did you tell her just turn your head sideways, don't breathe it in? And
yeah. And then I always add the rumor to my daughter. I was like, and she was pregnant with you when we were doing it, but you're fine. You're fine. That little twitch she has is not related. I'm sure of it. And so we did some preliminary study or trials, and it just worked awesome. You spray it on, it hardens in a few seconds. It really allows somebody, a non-medic, to just be able to crawl into a building, or like the Black Hawk Down scenario, a pilot's trapped or something, you need to crawl into a building or a position and apply a splint when you don't have room to wrap it. So anybody can take a spray in like a deodorant can and spray on this foam that hardens in 30 seconds. So boom, you got a splint in 30 seconds and you're on the way. And so patented the one for the leg, and then we patented one for the spine. The SEALs like stuff that floats, so the foam doesn't sink. No one carries a spine board, so you flip them over, spray their back, and they have a floating spine board. So at Ohio State, we've already published 3 or 4 papers about how to use it, and I think it's going to come along. And as Shay did describe, so far I am independently wealthy, secondary to my royalties. I have officially made $1,000.
Ooh. Big spender.
Yeah. And so I didn't get nothing, but that's the Army regulation that was published like in 1979, and they haven't updated it. And that's the real thing. You know how regs go. There's no need to update it when it's working. So I
mean, and we're joking about that. And in your field, have there been other things where you've seen other doctors, not just in orthopedics, but other military doctors that have come up with stuff like that? There has to be, right? There has to be. You would think at this time, where things have changed in that 20 years where medicine has made this leap, that they would somehow be like, okay, we're using this to, take care of soldiers, but let's also reward the physicians or
everybody else is smarter when they do it on their own time afterwards.
That's he's not telling you a bad thing there. You just got to keep quiet. Like, I have no idea how to fix that with foam. But I got a question about the foam. So the foam, you're not supposed to be touching your body.
Yeah. Is
this a different foam that you're using now that you're supposed to do? Because like the arm and the leg is kind of far away from, but like now you're spraying around the neck. You're not supposed to. Well, Emily's over there going like, he's asking too many questions.
Don't ask. No. It was interesting because the Army put me on the phone with the second CEO of Dow Chemical as a resident, which is like this guy. I'm sure he makes $10 million a year or something. They get me on the phone with him. And I'm talking to him about it, and all of a sudden he's like getting juiced. I'm like, hey, yeah, this is great. And he's like, you're using our product? I'm like, yeah. He goes, oh, this is great. This is going to be a good thing for Dow Chemical. And then you hear some in the background. And he turns around and he goes, you're putting this on people? And I was like, well, yes, sir. That's the point.
It's breaking up. I can't hear anymore.
He literally goes, don't ever tell anybody what you're using. Never say Dow Chemical again. Never use my name. This conversation never happened. Click. Hung up on me. I was on the phone with like this joint call with like 2 colonels, somebody from like all these higher ups in the DOD, and this dude, he's hung up. Boom. Conversation over. Done. Never heard back.
So is there so we're not supposed to talk about them, but we just did. No, it's fine. But this spray on foam, is it just one type of foam we use, or it could be used in different ones?
Well, that's what we're applying. So that's the dangerous part. It's got to become safe. So we applied for a $2.5 million Department of Defense grant at Ohio State this year. So we got to make it safe. The idea is perfect. It's a foam that you spray on, it gets hard. So now we just got to change the chemical base, and I think that's actually the easy part. The chemistry is the easy part. We have plenty of really smart people at Ohio State that can make a foam that's safe, even if it makes out of soybeans and you eat it when you're done.
Yeah, but
I'm serious. I love for it to be made out of soybeans. If it's biodegradable, you spray it on, use it for 5 minutes at the end, you take a snack. I mean, it looks like
it'd be better than some of the MREs. I mean,
I think it'd be equal. Yeah. It'd be equal. So I mean, it's going to come a long way.
There's a bunch of fiber in it. Go ahead and eat that. That's good. Yeah,
we're gonna
if you have to wait, it's on your arm. You can take a snack while you're getting,
Emily's arms in the U.S. patent. Yeah.
Or you look over and just chew on the one on your neck. That's a crazy. I mean, it's crazy. And so, how many patients? Do you have any idea of how many times the military has used it? Have you used it?
No, never.
No one's used it.
No, never. It's not safe. Don't do it. Don't do it at home. Don't spray it on anybody. Never use it. Okay, never use it. This is a patent. This is not to be used at home. Dr. Martin did not tell you to do this. Not safe.
Someone is gonna.
Don't do it.
Yeah, we don't want to see videos of it. No, I'm kidding. So nobody's used it. Like, I mean,
no.
Okay.
No, it's not ready for game time yet. I mean, it would. No, I wouldn't do it. I would not use it on my own family member if they had a broken extremity.
Okay.
Yes, but it's going to be. It's going to be very soon, and we're going to make it happen.
Yeah, but he's being serious. You can send me the videos if you do it. I'll send it. No, don't do that. But I didn't know if they had. You had any kind of because I feel like it would be something that if it works, someone's gonna want to try it. I guess you're right. The main thing is not to make somebody sicker, and if it's not supposed to be on your bare skin, I think it'd be bad to be on an open wound or.
Oh, not eventually. It's gonna be awesome. It stops bleeding, so it's gonna stop bleeding. It stabilizes the extremity so the bone doesn't bleed as much.
I think I need to take a note of this. And he brought this to Ohio State again. We could have got private investors for this. I mean, is it too late for that or no?
Ohio State doesn't have their hands in it yet. Because luckily Ohio State's a state and the DOD owns it. So when the Department of Defense owns something, Ohio State can't do much yet. Yeah. So I play for both teams. I'm a state and federal guy, so I got to always be careful.
Right.
I like you both.
So, but in the community that you're in, is there a lot of excitement for it, though, that you've talked to other doctors that have done that? Or, what did other doctors tell you when you bring that idea up? Because it seems a little, for you and I think, that have been in those experiences, a lot of other people that have, that seems like really a great idea. I mean, I remember the first time you told me, I was like, oh, that would be so much easier than when you watch somebody get put in traction for a broken, but what do other doctors, military or civilian, think of the whole idea?
A lot of them like it. They think it's so simple.
Right.
That's the part that makes it so cool, is that you just spray it on and you don't do anything. You can make it Ohio State red, or you can make it whatever color you want to. You can make it blaze orange for hunters. You can make it black for the military. You can do whatever color. You can put antibiotics and you can do anything else. So it's pretty simple, a simple product that just needs to be fine-tuned. And I had a conversation with Dr. Sam. So Dr. Sam was the guy who made the little aluminum splint we currently use in all of our kits. I have 6 in my truck. And he's actually an Army Vietnam vet. He invented it when he was playing with a gum wrapper one day in Vietnam. And he's a gazillionaire now, right? He's just killing it. So I actually had a phone call with him trying to get him to help develop it through the military. And all he said was, "It looks like dog vomit, Kevin." And I was like,
it actually does, though.
Yeah, I was like, thanks, sir. And I was like, after that, though, it's been my mission to prove that mine's better than Sam Splint. So every study I published in the past 3 years was how much better mine was than yours, Dr. Sam.
Because it looks, but it'd be interesting to see how that goes. Because it does seem to, for me, a very practical thing for anybody. I mean, it's a easy way to do something that doesn't involve, because I've watched people get. I mean, you've done it. Watch people get splinted, and that's I feel more. I was watching that. I feel like I want to pass out. I watched the guy break his femur and it come out of his, a compound, and them doing whatever they were doing to get it I was like, oh my God, just let the guys, just get him to Kevin. Stop trying to straighten it out. Just let it stick out of there. The guy's gonna.
He just broke.
I will tell you, there's one thing that I know about myself. I could not do there's no way in hell that I could ever been a medic. I've done the combat lifesaver stuff, all the stuff you're supposed to do, but there is no friggin' way. It'd be more because it's just you know that about you. That's what I've always with doctors, especially surgeons like you, to be able to walk in hey everybody, we're gonna cut this guy up, and I'm no, what do we have to do this? No, but it does take a different person to do that. All people are different, but that's definitely that'd be a lot easier than watching a pull, and it's just all it's right. I wish you the best of luck with that.
Thank you.
Hopefully $1,000 turns into Another $2,000. Hopefully, get up to $2,000. So when did this idea start? What year?
That was in 2010. Maybe.
So it's still good. It's still taking a while, and that's kind of that's kind of the military way, right? Or the
well, it takes you got a patent takes forever. You get a patent pending, you submit it, they kick it back, you submit it again. And why you have to use the military is my colonel, the guy I talked about, my mentor. He said, "Hey, Kevin, you do this on your own time. This is yours." And he actually signed a waiver that I could have it as my own. We looked at it as a family, and I talked to a couple different lawyers, and it was going to be about $180,000 to get it to patent. And I was a captain, and it was way too much. I was going to take a loan for $180,000 for something that never make a penny. And so I probably would have lost my, my complete butt because it's made me $1,000 so far. So I'd still be $179,000 in the hole plus interest, right?
They've been doing great things. Though.
So yeah, so in the big government, when Uncle Sam decides to pay for the lawyers and all the engineers and the artists to draw it just to get the patent, it's a big deal.
Yeah. And so the patent is approved yet, or is it still pending?
2.
Okay.
Yep, they're on my wall.
So just waiting, and they're working to find the
just gotta find the right
edible, biodegradable. Yes. Yep. Can it still be an antibiotic that you can eat?
No, you probably don't want to eat it if there's antibiotics.
Well, you said it was made of soy. Like you're
oh, you different flavors. Different flavors. It's like bourbon. It's like bourbon. Yeah, different flavors. Whiskeys.
Do you want the cherry splint, or do you want it'd be like when you go get your teeth?
Mint
your femur is sticking out of your leg. Do you want cherry or spearmint? I have that you can.
That would be cool. Yeah, that's a good idea.
I don't want to give you more ideas. Let's just stick with it not burning their leg off when you put it on there. Yeah.
All right, now we're going to some. Yeah.
So if you had to choose, if it was edible, biodegradable, or had an antibiotic, and what would it be?
Antibiotics probably.
I was going to worry if you,
the bang,
because I was even thinking that. I'm like, that makes a lot of sense, but I was like, I was waiting for him to go like 100% edible. No, but
that had the cool factor, but no, we'll go with what's.
Yeah, because that could be that would be a game changer too.
Yeah. And it only needs to be on for a few hours today. So it needs to be on to get you from battlefield to the first combat support hospital. It's not meant to be on forever. It's just boom, boom, point A to point B. Yep.
Good choice though by the whoever's watching. Like if he said edible, he's gone. No, he's done with this project.
Turn off the podcast.
So we talked about you went to Carson. Beautiful place, by the way. Beautiful. Everybody always listens and says that we always talk bad about every base, but Carson, there's been not anything bad to say about Carson.
No, it's phenomenal.
Carson's a good one if you can get there. Yep. Emily's always like, El Paso's beautiful.
Go back. It's okay.
No,
it's okay. It's not. No. Yeah,
no, El Paso wasn't the greatest that I've been. But so let's move ahead to the JSOC part. So you worked at you were on a team there. It's the joint. So for JSOC, we keep saying that's a Joint Special Operations Command. That's the command that's in charge of all of the all the tier 1 units. Your the Ranger Battalion, Special Forces, Navy SEALs, pararescuemen. Who am I forgetting? Delta Force. All of them. So you were part of a Joint Medical Augmentation Unit orthopedic team, an osteosurgical team is what it's called.
Yeah. So we so it's a team of different medical people, because these guys, they go out like the horse soldiers. Why I picked that. These guys go out into places where there's nowhere to go. If you get injured, there's literally nowhere to go. You're 8 hours from a hospital. We're in Somalia. Where are you going to go? You get a head injury or something. So the American government, we value our soldiers. Like, there's no doubt about it. The thing that people need to know is that how much we value our guys. We value them so much that we put a whole team of surgeons in these teams that you just named, their back pocket, to be there for them. That these guys don't feel abandoned. They feel like their government is there with them, and instead of sending them to a hospital, we're going to bring it to you, wherever that may be, no matter where. Grass, mud hut, doesn't matter. We go with them. And that's why it's always hard to get recruits and who wants to do that. Right.
So these teams, like, I've been out for a while, but a lot of the times in these teams, if you follow it, like a Special Forces team has a medic that an 18 Delta that's pretty well trained. That's that had that role to be able to take care of them. You have the pararescuemen that are trained in that way. When did they start deploying? Because I don't remember hearing about these medical teams that were with the JSOC units. When did that start? Do you know?
I'm not sure,
because that has to be a newer thing. In the past 20 years, I would say that they were doing that.
I'm not sure the official start date and if it was when that was released, actually. And we have these ghost teams, we have far forward surgical teams, FST fast teams. Right. So sending the guys forward isn't a new thing. It's just we've been doing it forever. It was just a smaller, more well-trained, cohesive unit that has trained at Bragg first before you go off as a team. Instead of being, I'm in the reserves now, but instead of just showing up and just kind of going, we had trained and rehearsed to make sure that if you're injured on the battlefield, you're getting immediate care.
So what's the team consist of? Orthopedic surgeon, like I'm sure is there, like a neurologist? I mean, do they cover everything, or are you kind of covering down on every, a couple doctors are handling everything?
Yeah, there's a few of multiple specialties. There's, people that can put you to sleep. There's people that can do surgery on different body parts, and it's a vague. I don't know how much details they still have out there, but there's a full surgical team, enough people to do surgery. Yeah, and I'm the only orthopedic surgeon, or there's not the only one, but there's one per team and different things. And then it's interesting that some teams don't feel like they need a orthopedic surgeon. Like, the SEALs never we don't need you. Why are you here? That's one less person. You take you, we can take one more SEAL. Okay, fine. Army Rangers love us. They just love us because they know they go in and they break shit, right? And not only break their own self, but they break others. And they just loved having ortho around, and it was great to be their team physician. And so Rangers lead the way for sure. If any Rangers out there listening.
So you're deploying with those guys, the JSOC. What is the craziest orthopedic injury you've seen? I think there's, obviously probably going to say the craziest one I think would have to be like an IED, that kind of trauma there. But like, what would be the craziest like non, IED type thing that you've seen? Like,
yeah. So probably the hardest day of my life / the most impactful / difficult day was Veterans Day 2016. So I'm in Bagram, Afghanistan, and it was the whole Trump-Hillary is going on, and Veterans Day fun run. So all the soldiers get in their PT gear and they go to the start gate and they're going to run a 5K race, which is interesting because on all my deployments, I always try to run that, and I do pretty well. But we were on night shift. There was no way our team leader was going to let us go. So we were lifting, and the sun's just starting to come up, hear an explosion, right? And we're like, crap. So we kind of get our stuff together. Nothing went off yet. And we end up going to Craig Army Medical Hospital right there on Bagram. And a suicide bomber had walked in the middle of the start gate and self-detonated. And we're not talking soldiers in uniform. We're talking soldiers in PT clothes. No battle rattle, nothing. So it was a mass cow and be involved in that. And our team actually went to the hospital, and we show up wearing beards. I'm showing up in this hat, cut off shirt, my Ranger panties on, scruffy beard. And we show up, and at first they wouldn't let us in. Some private pulled his weapon on us, and we're like, whoa, we're the dudes from across the street. Like, we're here to help. And we get in. And I remember walking through that room, and there must have been 20, 30 people just, screaming. There's a whole mass cow effect. And I thought, what do I do as a surgeon? I'm a bone guy. What am I going to do in this room? And I just remember just walking through this room, and this deep peace came over me, and I just kept walking down this aisle, and there was this guy was doing this, and I'm just kind of looking at everybody. And I came up to this dude, the very last guy I walked up to, and he had one arm going the wrong direction, the other arm going the other direction, like totally arms both were on, but they were both going the wrong direction. He was just talking up a storm. He was talking to this person. This medic was trying to splint his arm, and she was obviously didn't know what she was doing. And the guy was trying to help her splint with his other arm that was off almost. He was trying to help. I was like, holy crap. So I went to help, splinted him up. And our team was so rehearsed that our surgeon already had the OR cleared, and our CRNA already was in the OR prepping. So we, as the outside surgical team that had never stepped foot in that hospital, actually had the first patient in the OR that day. And we started operating, and I ended up operating for about 18 to 20 hours straight. And the hardest thing was for me that day, you asked the hardest patient was, we brought 3 patients into one OR room. We're supposed to have 1. We had 3 wrapped around 1 anesthesia machine. And in the middle, we had the worst patients. We had 2 trauma surgeons. On the edge, we had less severe. When we say less severe, I had a young female that had a blast injury to her abdomen, and she had in and out through her abdomen. So they say, you got this, Martin? And I'm like, yeah, I got it. So I remember putting the knife down on her abdomen to open up her abdomen. And I just thought to myself, how many foot and ankle surgeons are doing this today? Right. And that's all I thought. I thought, okay, take a deep breath and go. So I had to open up her, her whole abdomen, running bowel, resecting bowel where the injury had went, and doing surgeries that were out of my comfort zone, or out of my, I always say, I'm like, yeah, that one award picture I sent you, one of the best foot and ankle surgeons in America. Here you go. That day, being a foot and ankle surgeon was not helpful. It was not helpful. but that was probably the hardest. That was probably the hardest thing I did, and she did all right. The first guy I talked about, he ended up dying later at Walter Reed. Very sad. She lived. She did all right. I'm not sure if her scar was ever good or not, but I'm sure she's thankful that somebody opened her up and helped her that day. But that was by far the hardest / most intense moment I probably had in my life.
So 18 hours straight in the OR, like that. I mean, have you ever had anything like that civilian wise? I mean, what's a normal surgery day for you now?
Yeah, now it's like 5-6 hours and I'm out and I'm drinking coffee in between each one. And this one, actually, I was in there for about 8 hours and some nurse tapped me on the shoulder and said, hey, you got to get out of here. And I turned around and I was like flipping out. I was like, what do you mean? You know, I went into full flip out mode and she goes, just, hey sir, just look at yourself. And I look down and I'm still wearing my Ranger panties. I'm doing my third surgery in my ripped up Western Michigan muscle shirt. And I'm like, oh, she goes, just put some scrubs on and get a Coke. And I'm like, okay.
Yeah.
So at some point I had to tap out, get some scrubs on, and actually look like a surgeon after a while.
Yeah, because they're like, how did I get the foot guy that gave me this scar? He's supposed to be working on feet.
yeah, maybe. That patient definitely did not know I was a foot necklace surgeon.
So any of your patients that you dealt with there, have you ever had contact with them or?
It's one of those it's one of those super hard things because as the visiting special ops team, even that next day we did 18 hours. And by the time we were done operating, they came in and we had been up our whole night the night before. We were night shift guys, right? Because we only do everything at night. We stayed up the whole next day, the whole next 18 hours to surgerize him. And then the guys had got enough intelligence package to go out and start neutralizing people that were responsible for it. And so then we were up for another 2 days, like chasing these guys.
Right.
And doing all this, doing the do with the dudes. And, so that was like probably the longest, 3.5, 4 day stint of my life by far.
Yeah, it's just, I mean, do you ever wonder, like all those patients that you worked on, do you ever wonder how they, I mean, you have found out one passed away. Is there a desire for you to like try to find out who they are, or do you just kind of, you're in the moment, you deal with it, and then just, you move on? Is that?
I think the hardest thing for me was the guy that, the young, I think he was a E6 that did die. And I always just wanted to tell his wife that, and his kids, if he has kids, I don't know, that just how heroic that guy was. That guy was trying to help me splint his arm and was not nervous. He was trying to tell me his allergies and like, hey, sir. And it's like, hey, I'm going to be all right. And I'm like, yeah, you're going to be all right. And we had a full conversation right up. I was probably the last person he had a conversation with and said, hey, I'm part of the special ops team. Oh, he thought that was so cool that the special ops guys were taking care of him. Right. He's like, oh, I wonder why you had a beard. And we're just kind of chatting up. Say, hey, let's go to the OR. And he's like, all right, let's do it. And he only had this one little pinhole in his abdomen in a couple of spots because these exploded ordnance. It's a very teeny, super high rate of speed round. So it does a lot of damage once it gets inside you. And so, he thought he was going to be okay. He thought he had a little pinhole in his arms. He's like, this will fit. You can fix me, doc. Right. And we're kind of talking. And just to be able to tell his family, like how I always did, you're right. I wanted to be able to tell them like your loved one, I don't say took it like a champ because that's wrong, but he had valor up to the last second. He had no fear. He was comfortable who he was, and just an amazing American.
Yeah, I think it has to feel good to you to be able to talk to, to be able to see that and share a story. I think that's important, and
yeah,
I mean, and it just goes to your profession as well. It's one of those things like if you see a medic or a doctor, like, and you've been in those situations, you're hurt, you're like, there's a lot of trust and confidence that you, like you said, you're going to take care of me. I'm fine. And that's something to be said about your profession. And that's the way it is in the military. They when a medic comes, you're like, I'm fine. I can get, like you said, I can go do, you fix me. I can go do an EFMB. I can deploy in like 2 days. You're like, chill out. No, you're it's not that easy, but
yeah. And that's why one of the things I brought this little New Testament Bible that, we used to go through MEPS. They would hand you a Bible when you left. Now we're not allowed to. But when I was leaving that day, this old guy handed me this and he said, hey, put this in your pocket and you'll never know when you need it. And I thought, I don't need another Bible. I got enough, But he said, put it in your pocket right here, the camera. He said, put it right here. No one has a pocket right here, right? Who has a pocket? No one has a pocket right here. It doesn't exist. But my body armor, you know what we have right here?
The pocket, yeah.
Yeah, the pocket right here. And so I had this with me on all those missions. And let me tell you, I didn't need it that day. I probably needed it, but I had no time. But those days after, when everybody was dealing with it, because Bagram was one of the safest places in Afghanistan. We had the Iron Dome. We were safe. But being able to pull out, my little Bible and be able to talk to people afterwards was also huge because they still expect you as a doctor to have all the answers. you know? And so when they're dealing with that, even the medics were like, they were rattled. You know, they're a bunch of Air Force. It was an Air Force run hospital, and they were rattled that this had happened, and they'd seen things they'd never seen. And I think we're already, when we see the movies, we think of Luttrell, and we think of these guys that get hurt and how heroic they were, and Marky Mark, you know, lone survivor. This was a bunch of intel people. These were you know, I'm not saying they women, but there were women when there's a difference of someone pleading for their life with a man versus a woman. I don't care, maybe I'm sexist. It just sounds different, and it hits you different in your heart. It just does. And that was a different day, and people needed some scripture, and people needed some hand holding and praying after that day.
Yeah, I mean, that's one of those things. I mean, I may make a lot of doctor jokes, but you know, about medic. No, but it is an important thing. I mean, when there's chaos, those are, you know, you are the ones that are picking up the pieces, and you know, the medics are, you know, the medics that are, you know, before you, that get into you. They're you know, you hear some of the most amazing stories of valor are combat medics that you know, go to the fight to you know, get that patient, you know, stabilized and do that. It's pretty amazing, and it's something I don't, you know, I've seen it from a different view, and I that views it, you know, that's not a view I want to see. I don't know if I could ever get that, you know. Yeah. That's not an image I want to see. You know, I mean, that's not a conversation that I'd want to have, and I really appreciate you having the, you know, the you know, the courage and the ability to do that. That's pretty special. So how many years did you bang around with the boys, as you call it?
Yep, 6 years. So as soon as I got to Fort Carson, the whole time I was there, the thing that made me tap out finally was I got back.
Emily, she was like, "You're done."
No, Emily's been nothing but supportive. I mean, phenomenal. Never complained. I was in Afghanistan during that same deployment, and she actually broke her fibula, ankle fracture, couldn't walk. When I was deployed, 3 kids at home, her right ankle, can't drive. She gets all the accolades of being a phenomenal wife, surviving, and just, you know, never asked me to come home, never said, you need to come home, because she knew there was no one out there to do it.
I think that's where the real story of the foam came in, though. I think that's when she was broken. She's the one that came up with it, and she was like, Kevin uses this all the time. Here's foam. That's the real story.
Absolutely phenomenal. Took it and just did great, and had family support and neighbors and church members that helped us out. But it was a tough time for her, and it was a scary call for me to get. You know, most you know, now the phones are getting better, but you couldn't just call you, right? So she just called me. She's on the roadside. I just got T-boned. So she called me from the roadside. So I literally called the hospital at Evans at Fort Carson and activated a level 1 trauma for my wife's broken ankle. So she got there, the whole surgery.
She's like, no one's working on me except for Kevin.
Yeah, the whole team is there. They show up, everybody, and it was great. And then they called me and said, hey, she's got this. And they're like, no, we're all like, no one wants to operate on the foot and ankle surgeon's ankle, his wife's ankle, right? No one wants to do that. And they go, hey, what do you want me to do? And I said, I don't think it needs surgery. We'll treat it without surgery. And she's done phenomenal, but scary day for sure.
And you know, that's a different call. I mean, a different way to do it. Most people would be like, go to the hospital. They had to be able to do to activate. That's why, because it reminds me of a story when I was growing up. Right, I just got commissioned. I cut my arm with a chainsaw, and my parents lived near West Point, so we frantically. I don't know how we survived that drive there, but my dad's next door neighbor was a retired New York fireman. And he was driving like I think my dad looked at me and was like, you don't have to worry about your arm because we're going to die in a car accident on the way there. It was just crazy. But I remember we went into the emergency room and we had my mom call ahead a little bit differently, but to call and say that we're coming in there. So, you know, I walk in there holding, you know, pretty bad, you know, holding in there. And then the place was just different. We agreed up there and like, they were like, everything was like, remember how quiet it was? It was like, people weren't normally there, and I like walk up to the front counter because they were parking the car, and they're like, "This is gonna be a wait. We have a chainsaw injury coming in, like an amputee." And I'm like, "What?" And I'm like, no, "I'm the one who cut myself with the chainsaw." And I'm like, "No." And they're like, "No, this person's arm is cut off." I'm like, "No, it's, you know, that's not cut off." But and they take me into the room, and in the room is like the same thing. They're geared up to do whatever they're gonna do, and I walk in there, and they're like, "This is the chainsaw guy," and immediately like. One of the doctors just starts ripping off all the scrubs and everything. And they pulled him out of a surgery that he was doing because he thought, and so he leaves. And I remember, gosh, it was like a couple hours. We're sitting there. Nobody was treating me. And they come in, I was, you know, just in commission, like people walk in and be like, oh, it's not an amputation. I know. So the colonel came in, and I'll never forget, he's like, you need to explain to your mother what a really bad, cut is laceration compared to a, amputation. I was like, I didn't make the call. I just, we just told my mom to call, but I couldn't imagine that you get the whole thing and not even operate. Like, what are we doing here? What are we doing?
Yeah, that's what you can do. You can pull some strings when you know people. It's all about who you know.
Did she not get surgery because she didn't want another orthopedic surgeon to work on her, or what was the real story?
I didn't want somebody else working on it.
She's yeah, you haven't seen how but she hobbles around. She's a little bit shorter. She has one leg shorter than the other, but she's fine though. She made it. So.
You tell her it's okay.
She has a permanent limp because you're like, I do not want Che working on her. I've seen the work he's done.
That's for sure. Yeah, that's for sure.
So all the organizations you worked with all the different ones that you said, you talked about the SEALs, Rangers. Like what you I feel like you didn't like much work with the SEALs because they didn't want you there. But what was your favorite, the boys to work with and why? What did you like about working with them?
I think each of the teams, and I'm sure if any of them are listening, they'll be like, oh, this stupid doctor, what's he know? Delta guys, the most precise professionals I've ever worked with, bar none. Any medical doctor, never seen anything like it before in my life. If they're going to leave at 0 dark 01, they mean 0 dark 01, and if you're late, like you are shit out of luck. Phenomenal humans, phenomenal leadership. They're a little bit more mature. Some have some gray hair, right? So there's a whole different breed. Phenomenal. Navy SEALs, I feel like they're frat boys. Professional frat boys.
He's throwing them down.
Right? No, professional. Awesome.
Yeah.
But sometimes be like, hey, we're going on a mission. How much blood should we bring? What are we expecting? And they're like, sir, we don't know. I'm like, well, how many guys are we going? Well, we're going to take some of him and some of him. We're just going to go over here. And we're like, how many days? Well, I don't know. We're like, well, we got to know, like, we're bringing all your blood. Like, is he going to, it's all, like, and we need to, like, do some real medical planning. And it was just super hard. That's all I mean. Super professionals. Every Navy SEAL is going to hate me now. You guys are phenomenal, right? But the Rangers were the kind of the most unique to me because they're a bunch of young guys still trying to prove themselves, still trying to make it to those other teams. And they were just the most camaraderie. Just loved being there, loved life, just did some, and just were good dudes to work with in my mind. They were most fun, but everybody has their own little personality for sure.
Yeah, all the different, the different special forces groups. So you did, one of the things I looked at you by, you did some training, obviously with, you were part of that team, but you also did some training with the 18 Deltas and Ranger medics. What kind of training were you doing with them? Yeah, so I was training them. So we would go out and do these different, before we deploy, we'd go train up their medics to make sure that they were up on their splinting techniques, on their other, like basically for me is orthopedic stuff, training up, making sure that they were up to speed on how to splint and stuff like that. And they taught me a lot of stuff as well, but just making sure they were ready to go. Yeah. So what was, was that fun? Where the 18 Deltas are the special forces medics, they're pretty usually a little bit more, older than, like you said before, than the Ranger Battalion medic, I'd assume. They're kind of the Ranger medic and the 18 Delta. The 18 Delta is a little bit more specialized. They do dental work. They do some more higher up stuff. And the PJs, we worked with the PJs quite a bit, the pararescue guys. They're all really good. It was just downtime, making sure we're getting good training. Stay proficient in what they're. Yep. And they don't get it. They don't. How often do they get exposed to an orthopedic surgeon? Almost never. So they knew how to splint. But hey, why not have a guy that's an expert teach you how to splint the real way? I think it's crazy when you hear like the amount of training they were getting now compared to, you talked about medical, advancing the training, advancing. I still remember it was the HHC XO, the medical, we had the medics, and we were trying to think of ways to get them exposed to, like I went one time to get an IV because I was hungover. That was that's the best thing to get over a hangover. Yeah. And like I always use this excuse of, we're training the medics, these new medics that were come on to do it or whatever. Yeah. And I remember one time, like I think the guy is like, I'm talking to somebody else and I just feel like this warm on my leg, and I look down and my vein is just squirting out blood, and this kid is like frozen there, and I'm just like, oh my God, like put your hand over, and then but. We would try to do this crazy stuff like put them in a wash closet when it's dark, because there was things you learned at the time. We weren't doing like having these guys and gals do, give an IV in the dark or with limited visibility and all this kind of stuff. Yeah. It's crazy. So you hear all the training they get now. It's pretty amazing when, instead of just being in an aid station where it's kind of limited. 9/11 and the 20 years of war in two places definitely has changed the whole training dynamic for sure. For sure. But I still was kind of, we haven't picked back up on this Black Hawk Down thing yet. We're talking about that now? We're going to give him a hard time about that? Yeah, because the thing that I wanted to say. He's pointing at Nate. Yeah, so Nate. So it's interesting.
So if you watch it, I want you to watch it now. The opening scene when they're coming in and there's the shark swimming and the guys are riding the plane and say, that's shark infested water, right? Remember that scene? So fast forward to 2015, Major Martin is there doing some stuff with Blue, and because pirates always need to be taken care of, right? So we're there. And so in our free time, they have this cabana on the beach. You go on the beach and it feels like you are in the Caribbean. Beautiful sand. And like, hey, we're going to take out one of our Zodiacs. And we're going to go diving. So we go out with these guys and we have our snorkel gear on and we're out there. We're diving on this coral reef. It was like beautiful. They have a beautiful coral reef, but who's going to go to Somalia, right? To go to the coral reef. All right. And so we're out there and no kidding. We're out there for a while and it was fun. We were conking, catching these huge conchs. I ended up cooking them up. It was a great time. But I'm kind of wading my way back to shore and I'm swimming and something bumps my arm. And something bumps my arm again. And I was like, I'm going to die. Something's going to eat me. I look and there's this thing next to me and I like just scream. I'm like, I'm like doing this and I'm taking off running the water. I look back. And so in Somalia, what they do with all the scraps of their like animals, they throw them in the ocean. So the water was chummed, actually, if you think about it. It was full of this goat and it was all these extremities from this goat were floating by me as I'm just leisurely swimming off the coast of Somalia in this chummed water. So I'm lucky I didn't get eaten by a shark. How do you explain that? So I always told
again that comes to like the SEER school who broke the cert. They're like, okay, who took the doctor out and let him get bitten off by a shark? Who was that? And the guy's like, wasn't me. I didn't do it. We told him not to go. We told him not to go on.
No, it was the frat. It was the frat boys. That's why the frat boys.
You're gonna be fine. It's no big deal. There's no sharks out here. That's like the Zodiac's gonna scare him away.
Yeah, but that was a good time. So when you watch that movie, think of that. All right.
Oh, that's crazy. So you ready? You ready for another refill? Or are you still?
Oh no, no, this is okay. We
gotta go to the second feature. We gotta get to the second featured whiskey.
There's a second feature.
No, you get one. I gotta do one too. Oh. We got another glass. We don't pound that. You don't have to. Oh, okay, he's pounding. He's. I guess Emily's driving.
I didn't know the rules. Yeah.
Well, come on. There's always a second. This featured one we've actually been trying to feature for like 3 episodes. So my dad wasn't whiskey guy. We didn't do it then, and then we ran out of time in another one. So we're gonna finally feature this whiskey. Okay. Have you ever had Boone County before?
I don't think so.
All right, you're gonna have it tonight. We're gonna give you a new one you haven't had. So we actually posted this a few weeks, but we're gonna redo it again. Our next featured whiskey is actually a Boone County private barrel pick from our friends at the One Man Wolf Pack. It's called Made by Ghosts, Picked by Wolves. This is a Boone County single barrel. This one's 7 years old, 114 proof, and the mash bill is 75% corn, 21% rye, and 4% malted barley. Boone County is located in Florence, Kentucky, just south of Cincinnati. You see it all the time. There's a big water thing if you go down that says, Florence, y'all. Pretty thing. But that distillery's roots is pretty old. It goes back to 1833 when it was the Petersburg Distillery, which was founded by William Snyder. In 1869, the distillery was sold to one of the largest producers of whiskey, and it became one of the largest producing whiskeys by the year 1880. But by 1910, the distillery had to be shut down because the railroads were starting to go through there. So a lot of the places where they were stopping, people weren't stopping. And it kind of got bypassed as being a major place to stop and get whiskey and also to sell. So they actually sold off all the reserves back in like early 1910. So in 2015, 2 local Boone County residents, Josh Quinn and Jack Wells, actually re-established Boone County Distilling that we know today. Very beautiful, small distillery. The bourbon, is again distilled in Boone County. The brand ethos is Made by Ghosts, which is why they named that, but Picked by Wolves, and kind of interesting. But this is a nod to the early pioneers who crafted spirits in Boone County more than 137 years ago. There's also a label 8 on it. Like a lot of people didn't notice it. I've seen it before, but when you see it once, it's like one of those things like when they hide it in there, you don't notice it. And then when you finally see it, you can't not see it, with logos. But the Boone County, it's actually an 8. Linking the words that link Boone and Boone County together. And this is actually a reference to the old designation of it was actually the 8th. The Registry Distillery 8 was a designation for that Petersburg distillery that originally was. But that DSP belongs to Four Roses. The Four Roses right now, so they can't use that. So they've kind of snuck that into their logo. obviously the lawyers, we got a lawyer back there. They've been able to get away with it, but it's pretty unique stuff. This stuff is good. This is actually an MGP. We've talked about that before. It's actually distilled in Lawrenceburg, Indiana, 7 years. But if you haven't had this, I think you'll like this. A little higher proof. So we'll give it a go. We've been trying to get this one open for a while. And I might not be able to open it now. No.
Higher proof, are we talking here? 120s?
114.4. So what isn't high as you had before, but a little bit different. Like your mash bill that you brought is high. The second grain is wheat. This one is rye, so might give you a little bit more spicy than what the one you just had, but we'll have you pour that.
Oh, that's good. That's good.
That's good. Lick it off your hands there.
Thank you.
I'm trying to make you happy here. We're hearing more stories about the splint. Stuff like that. It's good stuff. We're trying to get to the secret of where the splint really came from.
Yeah.
But thank you to Ryan for donating this we can enjoy tonight. So appreciate it. You want Nate? Here, wait. And he's gonna come in there and grab it.
Great. Yeah, thanks.
What do you think of it?
No, it's good. I don't have all the big words to describe what stuff tastes like, but it's very smooth. It's good.
Yeah.
I like when you get a higher proof. It doesn't have that bitterness to it.
I think you definitely taste the rye. I like the higher rye stuff more than the wheated. Wheat is a little soft for me, but I think you get the nice rye notes, so it's good though. So we talked about anything else with you swam with the carcasses, almost got eaten by sharks. You got a patent that made you $1,000. Let's talk more about what you're doing now today. You're in the reserves. Yeah. So what's a reserve what's the life of a reserve orthopedic doctor? Where's your unit at now? What do you do?
Yeah, good question. So the Army Reserves are pretty hard up for orthopedic surgeons right now because the pay is so average. So for me, I spend 3 weeks every summer at Fort Riley, Kansas, and I just backfill and I go in and I do basically high quality foot and ankle surgery on service members that don't. There's only 6 to 9 orthopedic foot and ankle surgeons in the Army at any given point. In the reserves, there's less. So Fort Riley does not get its own foot and ankle surgeon. So when I show up, they have saved the worst of the worst, and I get in there and I do kind of complex foot and ankle surgery for them. Because at Ohio State, I function at like the top of my game, the hardest surgeries. Every surgery I do is the hardest, been referred from the whole state to me. So when I get to Riley, they love it because they have an opportunity to get these soldiers, somebody who does really complex stuff at their small hospital.
So these soldiers they're waiting on, can they send them to other places if they needed to, or do they just wait for you? They know you're coming?
They can. So some get sent away, of course. They're not going to wait long. But, I mean, They have somebody's like, hey, if you can wait, hey, we got Martin coming in July. Let's just save this one. I just got an email from a sergeant major who's deployed somewhere right now, and he got injured. And he knew that I was coming, and he actually told them, you're not touching me, and I'm going to see Martin when I get there. So this is my 3rd year there, and I think it's starting to – they know that in July Martin's coming. And so it's kind of nice to have some sergeant major I've never met be like, hey, you took care of some of my guys last year. I'm waiting for you.
That must make you feel good, though. You talk about the things where, you started from humble beginnings. Yeah. You weren't the best student. I mean, to be able to, to get an award, then also to have, service members wanting you to do the surgery. There must be must make you feel good, right?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, it's nice to be able to have that impact and have positive outcomes. We always want positive outcomes, but for me, it's we practice. I teach around the country. We're hosting 25 surgeons at Ohio State in August. The best surgical residents in orthopedics are coming to my course. I'm going to teach them a whole day course, and they're going to go back and hopefully bring that out there. And because teaching is the next part. Like, you can do something, but can you show somebody else how to do it?
Right.
And how can you bring them up to your level? And I think being here at Ohio State gives me the opportunity to function at such a very high level because they're so supportive of us as surgeons.
So how long have you been at the Ohio State?
That's right.
I got to correct it for you.
The Ohio State.
So I'll get in trouble for that because I'm like, it's the Ohio State. But yeah.
So I'm closing in on my third year at Ohio State.
Okay. Yeah. So what made you choose the Ohio State, not your home state? Was it what made you come to Ohio State?
Yeah, so it's a good question. So when I was leaving, and it was 20, of course, right, pre-COVID. So before that, though, I wanted to stay somewhere near Michigan. So we were like, hey, 6-8 hours from our hometown. So my 2 final places was the Green Bay Packers and the Ohio State. My last 2 on my list. So we flew the whole family to Lambeau, got to sit in Brett Favre's locker, got the whole Lambeau, everything. It was awesome. Bought all my kids Green Bay stuff. We're going to Lambeau for sure. hate to say it, sorry, Packers, they were super unsupportive of the military. I told them, hey, I'm in the reserves, I might deploy. And they're like, hey, we'll save your job, but you're not getting paid. We're not. I said, how about insurance for my family? No, we're cutting it off. Yeah. I was like, what? When I leave? They're like, yeah, nothing. The second you leave, boom, you're on government. Best of luck. We'll save your job because you have to, but that's it.
Wow.
That's it. Ohio State, I get here and they're like, hey, when you go, we'll make sure that your family can stay on insurance. Your pay won't get cut. You're not going to pay you more, but you won't get cut. Right. And then reserve time, we got your back. Don't worry. I mean, that's huge. That's how you get people. That's how the Ohio State got me. I have no family. I have no reason to come to Ohio State. Right. But so taxpayers in Ohio, I mean, that's a big thing. And that Ohio State, if the dean and the president and all the people at Ohio State are listening, that's a huge thing to recruit military because we felt welcome.
Right.
And I was like, how this is an organization that's going to support me and they've been nothing but supportive, and they've done everything they told me they'd do. And it's making my service in the military easier. And if I can make it, if it's easy, then I'm going to keep serving until the government tells me I can't.
Right.
Or until I make 06 and then I get out.
And you're like, we're leaving. Until that patent pays off, we have $5,000. We're out of here.
until I make that big.
When I get $5,000 and we get plane tickets to Aruba, we're gone. No, but no, I mean, in Ohio State's a pretty well known teaching, medical school. I mean, it's I make a lot of jokes about it, but pretty well known. But that's surprising. Now we know why Aaron Rodgers left. I mean, he wasn't digging the whole Green Bay vibe. This is like another hit on that. That's surprising to hear because a lot of these organizations come off and doing that. And that doesn't even just go to like doctors. If you're a business owner out there, you should support the military. Telling a military person, yeah, sorry, we're only holding your job because we have to is completely bullshit. That is really all you have to do. But I don't think that's the best way to recruit people like Kevin or anybody else that military people again have a ton of experience and God, I've never had that said to me outright, but I mean, I think it is a feeling that a lot of veterans do say they go somewhere and they're not really, if they're in the reserves, it's, I think it's gotten better though over time because I think they've been exposed to a little bit more. Some organizations, some companies, because it wasn't as common as before. You didn't see, the mass deployments you saw over the past 20 years, but still, shame on the Packers. Now I'm gonna have to give my son Nate even hard time since his favorite team now. So
yeah, I mean it was eye opening though. It was kind of sad because we had bought all that Green Bay crap, and I'm like, yeah, put that crap back. We're going to get some.
You should have got an autograph before you left. Like, can we get?
We got the superstar treatment around Lambeau. They won't let you walk on the field. Even me, they wouldn't let me walk on the field. You got to like close, and they explained how half it. Do you know it's half fake? Most of it's fake. The grass.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's fake. They plant in all this fake stems, and then the grass grows between it. So it's like 70% fake. Who would have thought that?
People are like, "What?" No, Nate's like, "I don't even know what a football field is. He's never watched Blackout Down or watched a football game." But the Packers are in the NFL. Nate, I'm kidding you right there. You're getting all the brunt today. It's fun. No, it's always fun though. No, that is disappointing. I mean, because was that your first choice by far?
The pay was about the exact same, so it wasn't financially much of a difference. But it was just. It was even if it would have paid more, it was that feeling when I left that day. I was bitter.
Right.
I was like, wow, you would have told me that I wouldn't waste my time flying my family out here.
Exactly. Yeah.
I wouldn't even because your family takes a huge hit. My family, I deployed multiple times, and it's a family ordeal. When you tell me you don't have insurance for my kids, when you leave, you're losing your insurance. Even if it's not pay, it's just, hey, we're going to look out for your family.
Yeah.
I still would have went. I probably said, okay, that's okay, fine. I understand the pay thing. I get it. But when it came down to insurance, I was like, this is just sucky.
Yeah.
Right. Look out for my family.
Well, the time I've been talking to you, mentorship, so sharing your knowledge, look at, put aside what they said to you, that part of it. At Ohio State, you have to be having more impact, like you talked about. You want so like up there, what would you have been like a team doctor then?
Yeah.
So I mean, aside from that, and what they said to you, maybe that's things happen for a reason. Maybe it wasn't even that clear cut. Maybe that was just somebody trying to deter you, but you gotta feel like Ohio State's more in line with what you wanted to do out your career, where someone's helped you, mentor you, and then also sharing it, like because you're teaching there, so you're having a huge impact on future doctors. So instead of taking care of Aaron Rodgers,
I mean that's 100% true. I mean I'm with a resident every day. It's in training. This week I had a medical student. Last week we had a doctor from Western Africa who was rotating with me. And so the exposure for sure is just massive, and the footprint we can leave on medicine is tenfold. And even the $3 million grant we're looking for to develop spray foam, that would never have been done at, Green Bay wants nothing to do with that. They're just producing, taking care of that.
Yeah, it's a different goal.
Different goal.
So where you at now? Is any other military doctors that are residents or interns that are studying under you? Is there anybody that's like kind of following your footsteps that are down there? Not exactly you, but
yeah, we have right now I have one Air Force captain. So when he leaves, he'll join he's already in the Air Force, but he'll go full-time active duty Air Force next year.
So is he reached out to you as like a mentor, or are you just more of a...
To some degree, not completely. He probably should more. He'll look back later and wish he had probably, but good guy.
But he's in the Air Force, so
he's in the Air Force. We'll let him go.
But you talked about being a mentor is important to you. Have you reached out to him and maybe, push the issue? I mean, you have to. It's kind of a 50-50 maybe to know what you've seen in your military career to. I would think he'd be thriving for that, or she. I mean, I would think. But
you would think so. Maybe I don't feel that yet. To me, mentorship is a two-way street, right? So the mentee has to be all in. There has to be a way for them to give and take, and people want you to mentor them. I get 2 emails a week from medical students that want to come rotate with me. But to be a good mentor, you also have to pick the best of the best and the people that have shared mutual goals that will learn the best, and you have to pick them and then dive deep into them and be there with them 3 years later, 4 years later. So if you just mentor everybody, you're really mentoring nobody. Yeah. So you got to kind of be able to pick and be selective.
So one of the things we didn't talk about, back to I think probably Colorado, you were the staff surgeon at the Army World Class Athlete Olympic program.
Yep.
So we've had a guest on that was wrestling for that program. So if people haven't listened to the episode, the Army does have world-class athletes that compete. A lot of them go on to compete in the Olympics. So you've dealt with the Olympic killers, the JSOC, all that kind of stuff, to actual Olympic athletes. What was it like working with those military athletes that were serving their country, but also trying to become elite athletes and trying to make it to the Olympics in some cases?
It's a lot like it is now here at Ohio State. So the most famous person that I operated from that team was also a female wrestler, right? And she came to me and her ankle was super unstable. She couldn't get to that next level. So we did this, reconstructed her ankle, and she went out literally within, I think it was 6 or 8 weeks, and she won Worlds. Yeah. And she was like, thanks, doc. Like 8 weeks later, that's unheard of. You should be in a splint or something. And she went and won Worlds, right? But taking care of those athletes was my first exposure, and I think that's what got me ready for Ohio State. When I interviewed here at Ohio State, that was a big thing. Like, hey, I have some experience taking care of Olympic athletes. And so a Buckeye, I was at that level. Most of our Buckeyes are, on the Olympic level all the time. So I take care of, women's basketball, women's tennis, some of the baseball teams, and some of those athletes, and be able to get them back safely back to the court or field is something I learned there and cut my teeth on the Olympic team there.
Yeah, they're interesting. Like when I first came in, we heard about the Olympic athlete program. You're always like, or the world-class athlete program. You're like, oh man, what this person? But yeah, when you see them do what they do, you're like, holy Christ! I mean, it is admirable that they still stay in the military. They're great marketing, for the military to see, an Army, or Air Force or whatever branch go out and win, a world championship or get to the Olympics. That's a big deal, and it's an important thing. It's always great. It is right. It's funny to hear you say, because you're pretty optimistic about all the great support that they give us. I've never kind of disputed that you can't get some people think in the military you don't get some of the best care. It depends on where you're at. We do have some of the best doctors, some of the best surgeons that are out there, because money's not an issue, number one, and then also the experience that you have. Mine was kind of funny. I had PRK, and I was worried about that, and a military doctor messing with my eyesight. I was like, what about that? And I remember my mom had a friend that was in that business, and I called her, and she's like, what's his name? And I was like, okay, and told him. She's like, well, what laser are they using? And she's like, you absolutely need to do this. Guy has performed 1,000 more surgeries than I have ever had. Has the top of the line equipment. So the military does take care of it in some aspects. One of the things that I think it's still struggling with is mental health. That's why we talk about this. They are very great at giving us, new legs, new limbs, and taking care of us and putting us back together physically. But I think mentally is one of those things that we still have a lot of work to do. One of the reasons why, the sole reason why we started, Pours with Patriots a little over a year ago. So thank you for what you do on that. It's pretty amazing to see you continue to share that. Is there any, are you trying to recruit any doctors down there when you're down there? Do you try to say, hey, when you're done with this, you've seen what it takes to be successful as a military doctor. If you said like, hey, you might do well as like a direct commission into the military, is that something that you look at, or do you just keep your head down and teach them the skill?
No, it's interesting. So the local recruiters here in Columbus have reached out to me, and now I get asked to speak around the country, called visiting professor. So they come with me now. The recruiters do. When I was I went to Harvard, and the local recruiters reached out to me because they could never get their foot in the door at Harvard. So I emailed Harvard and said, I can't come unless I can bring 2 recruiters with me. And they're like, oh, no one's ever asked us that. And they're like, yeah, sure. And so I show up, and there's a whole room full of residents, and I have 2 recruiters in the back with their table and their booth set up. And like, hey, we'll pay off $475,000 of your debt. And these guys got a ton of debt. And so they got people at their table. I'm not sure if they signed anybody up, but it's a way to do that. So I think that's my also way to give back. So they came with me up to Akron a few weeks ago. They went with me somewhere else up into Detroit. They came with me, the recruiters did. And I don't push it, but if I tell my story and it sounds cool to you as a future doctor, then I think it's a way to go. But back to your point about doctors in the military, I loathe that comment, like, oh, the doctors in the military are crap or whatever. But because right now, the chief of Johns Hopkins is Jim Fickey. He's been in front of Congress multiple times, and he's at Hopkins as the chair. Matt Provencher was the team doc for the New England Patriots. DJ Tokish is at Mayo, complete amazing orthopedic surgeon, all came out of the military. I mean, there's countless guys and gals around the country who have left and have taken care of the next level.
Yeah, but that's in anything. There's always a criticism. I think you and I talked about one time drinking about experiences you have with PAs or medics and all that kind of stuff. And just like any profession, there's bad military doctors. My experience was never that. I always thought that the doctors, the only thing was the military bearing. A lot of them, they don't. Some of the, and it's like we talked about in the very beginning of the podcast, is like the people that were prior enlisted you don't have to worry about, but they're definitely some that get in there and that the colonel wants you to call him like Kevin, and you're like, I'm just going to call you sir. I'm a captain. You're a colonel, but I don't know, I'm a doctor, but they're not. They are, but they're also colonels in the Army, and I think that's important. What's your? I mean, you see this going on. You're going to the recruiting there. Like, what do you think when they're offering doctors, $475,000 to of debt? What do you think that's like? Is there anything part of you that's like you wish they were just doing it? You think we're going to get doctors in that aren't, I don't know how to, if I'm asking this the right way, but like, it's kind of like dangling a carrot in front of someone that has a lot of debt. Do they really want to be in the military, or do they just want to get $500,000 paid off?
I think you have to do both, because right now recruitment is down across everything. So if we can throw some money at somebody, it's not like got me, right? They say, hey, I can pay for your college, so here I am. So I think you have to dangle the carrot, and then behind that, you're still volunteering. So we're still, volunteering in that same esprit de corps, because when I was leaving, they were talking about doing civilian contractors.
Right.
And so can you imagine, for one, how much you'd have to pay somebody with my skill set to go to someplace awful? What you'd have to pay me would be insane, right? What I get paid now, triple it, quadruple it?
But I don't know. You said it before. I don't know if you could, I don't know if you could pull like the best orthopedic surgeon
no way
out of wherever, and say, if you gave them 3 times, I don't think they're going to do that. I think the dangle the carrot, I'm just kind of say that I think that's easy to say. I'll take $500,000. I'll take $500,000, but that's very easy to say. Most of them will do that. But then we start talking to them, probably when the recruiter talks to them what they're really going to do, only the real people that are going to do it will take the money anyways. Yeah. You're not going to get someone that's like, you would hope you wouldn't, but in today's world, it is true. Like, you got to get them in there, and then hopefully they see what the military really has to offer, and it's the experience level for.
Because can you imagine the things that we were talking about earlier about running into a room or being able to do an open bowel? Because if I'm a contractor and I'm in in Afghanistan, and I'm the foot and ankle guy, and you call me into the OR and tell me I need to do an X-lab, I'm telling you it's not in my job description, right? And that soldier dies that day.
Yeah.
That's the thing people don't understand about if you're going to hire a civilian contractor, about the other things that how soldiers go above and beyond for their fellow soldier.
So we'll talk about it. I'm very anti-VA. One of the things I always talk, the VA hospital, I'm sorry.
Okay.
One of the things I've always thought is the VA hospital doesn't have enough like ex-veteran medical people. That's one thing you just said to me like before. It's not the same thing you're talking about. I feel like you go to a VA hospital to someone that's really has never doesn't have any idea really what you're going through. I heard it's getting better. It depends on the VA hospital, but I've always thought like, what's your thoughts on like a VA? Like could you see you going to work at a VA hospital ever?
No, the pay is miserable.
I mean, I was going to say other than pay, but like, do you see that?
That's
or even like my other thought was, I even thought not even like for military guys, I mean, you're talking about the active duty being taken care of, you know what I mean? To money doesn't matter, but I feel like it would be a good place for like a VA a medical doctor, a military medical doctor to go there and be overseeing that rather than civilians.
It'd be great, but they have the clause where you can't pay a government official more than the president or whatever it is, so they can't afford any of us.
Yeah.
I mean, they pay the senior guy makes the very basic pay. So you're never going to get a senior orthopedic surgeon that's high quality. I mean, not never, that's the right word, but you'll get a very, very few.
Yeah. That's my gripe about when you're active duty, things you're taken care of. When you get to the VA, there's different things, all of a sudden now the drug that you were getting for 20 years, all of a sudden now it's a generic. You can't get that unless you go here and that kind of stuff. I just feel like you are right. We do take care of veterans to a certain extent, in my opinion. And then it's kind of, we've used you for what we need you for. And it's kind of, it's not the best it could be, in my opinion. I always thought that'd be a great idea to, maybe an active duty medical person running a VA you might see some changes in how it goes, not only for the doctors, but also for the patients as well. So, interesting though.
Yeah.
So one of the other things we didn't talk about, we're getting close to the end here. Okay. We usually try to stay around 2 hours because Nathan, he's going to go. He wants to go watch Black Hawk Down. I think he's feeling motivated. But you talked about back home. You do a grant for school. Talk a little bit about that. That's something you brought up. I didn't write it down, but you one of the themes I see like you're always trying to give back and trying to take care of people. Tell us a little bit about that.
So Emily and I just are so passionate about our small hometown. We grew up in the same small town, and the average income of our county at the last census was about $31,000. Right, $31,000 a year. And so to be able to give anything back, and I even told my kids, I'm not putting this much in your education because you can have my GI Bill that Bush gave me, right? And I said, hey, we're going to give this scholarship to somebody who wants to go into healthcare every year. And it's the graduating class this year was up to 40. I graduated at 35. And so when I gave commencement, I kind of laughed and I told them, I said, hey, I was fourth in the class. And to be able to give back to your local community where you came from and where you grew up, and to those people, even if it's not a ton, if it pays for a semester or whatever it does, it's just a way to, I don't know. I think we all should give back when you come and you have that deep thanks to those people. The teacher that said, hey, you can make it. Hey, the teacher that said, hey, you should go to the next level. You should try hard. If you can give back to that community, and you've been blessed enough to do so, you should do it. Yeah, people don't give enough, and you have to ask yourself at the end of the day, when is the last time you've done something for somebody who can't do anything at all back for you? Ask yourself that once in a while when you've done something, because sometimes you do a favor for somebody, like, hey, I'm going to be here on your podcast, but can I take this home with me?
Yeah.
No, right?
Okay, no.
But see,
we're going to give you a guess, but you're not taking that one.
But versus somebody who can't do anything for you. Right, that's the difference of pure giving.
Yeah. Well, no, and that's hard. I mean, a lot of people do that. I mean, like that's a big. It's funny you said, because you can donate a lot to charity, but what do you get back if you donate a lot? You get tax breaks. Yeah. We do some charity in a bourbon group, and yes, people are giving, but they have the opportunity to get something back. So I take it as a point when I'm doing that is I'll play on that part. If you want something, I'm not getting anything from it, but you know, what I mean, I'll if that's what it takes for you to open up your pocketbook, I think that's important too. But yeah, you're right. It is like it is hard to you know, the people that do donate when you're not getting anything back, or you know, like I'd love to see somebody donate $10 million, but like I don't want a tax break on. I want to, but no one's doing that, you know, and you kind of don't expect, you know, maybe somebody is, but.
And besides, right here on this podcast, they actually wanted to do a spotlight in the local press, and I told them no because I don't want that. Emily and I both talked, and we didn't want any attention at all. We didn't nothing. We wanted none of that.
And what they don't know is you're getting that $1,000 from the splint is what you're now getting. They're like,
it almost paid for it didn't pay for the scholarship.
We did have $1,000, but we had to stop for lunch on the way up and pay for gas, so you're only getting $875.
Sorry,
we're not going to stop on the way back. No, but that's amazing. I thought that was definitely give you a chance to highlight. I mean, it's not something. It's just for local, just for your school,
just for my Martin Public High School. It's actually Martin Public.
There you go.
Yeah.
So you gotta. So how many applicants do you get normally? Is it a
this year?
I mean, this is interesting because we're starting off. You know, our charity, what we're starting off with is it's new. It's year that, but our plan is to give some scholarships to students whose parents of service members committed suicide. So there's not. It's a small group of people it really affects. So I got to feel like 40 people. It's got to get.
We did have exactly 2. Applicants this year, so
2 out of 40 is pretty good.
I actually felt bad not giving it to the second one. Turns out we're related to the second one distantly, and I felt bad. I was like, oh, I thought it known as you, but it's blinded. So that's the whole point of doing it blinded, right?
So do it blind. How did you do that blind?
So you can't put your race, your sex, your gender, any of that stuff on there, and just tell me why you want to go into medicine. And then we just no name, nothing, one page, because if it's more than a page, I lose focus, and we pick it.
And so medicine means what? Do they have to become a doctor? Can they become a nurse?
Healthcare. So I had one applicant wanted to be a surgeon, and one wanted to be an athletic trainer this year. So I'm sorry, I was biased. I picked surgeon right away.
So here, everybody at Martin High School, just say you want to be a surgeon. You can become a nurse. It's all right. Now you know how to get to them.
Yeah. My soft spot. Sorry.
You gotta mention mentoring, mentoring, backhoes, and surgeon and orthopedics. You're in. He's like, we got our winner, Emily. We don't need to go anymore.
Right to show.
But that's awesome. So final question before you go.
Yeah.
You got some young kids.
Yep.
They have a long history in their family for the military.
Mm-hmm.
Any of the kids have the military bug yet?
My oldest, for sure, he wants to walk in dad's footsteps, and I've tried not to push him in any certain direction, but definitely. And then my second wants to do Air Force. I'm not sure why Air Force, maybe because at Fort Carson, we're surrounded by Air Force bases, so a lot of his peers were kids of Air Force. He wants to be involved in robotics and stuff like that, and that's a great place to be. So 2 of the 3, I think they're all in.
Well, the one can't because she's been contaminated by the spray on, so she's probably
she's got that twitch. So.
She's got the twitch that you have to get througrough, but you don't feel like as a parent you push them there. It's just kind of their experiences they've seen, or
the only thing I tell them is that you're going to Ohio State because I get half off tuition. So if you want to go anywhere else, it's on you.
That is not what you need to tell these people.
That's what you tell them.
You can go to Michigan. You can go to any school you want.
No way.
Look at the GI Bill. Come on.
Well, they get to split it, right? So I got 30, right? And Bush gave us 30, so I can split it. I split it between both my boys. So they each get 15. 15 at the University of Michigan buys you what? 60 days.
They can take out some money.
60 days. Ohio State, that's going to pay for their whole education, right? Ohio State hooks you up with that employee.
Your whole family. So who's your football team? Are you rooting for the Ohio State now? You've went completely. Ditched Michigan. You're now.
I'm a 3-year season ticket holder.
Whoa!
at the shoe.
I feel like you can't even go back. Is it safe for you to go back to Michigan? Do you tell people?
Really. I actually hide my back into parking spots to see my license plate because they will key your car. They will key your vehicle or hit your mirror or something for sure. But it says we're almost done. I don't know if it's tradition or not, but I definitely did bring you one of our joint medical augmentation teams. Right now, I don't know why. Like on eBay, these things are going for like $500 because you can't find people who collect these coins. Right. But as a team member, we can get them.
If you sign it, I could probably get another $200 off it.
Really?
So we'll have you sign it.
We'll sign it. But
I appreciate it. We have some relics. And
I wanted for Patriots and the work you guys do. for veterans that struggle with PTSD. And I'm no different. We all seen some things we wish we hadn't. But I wanted to give this to you guys as an official thank you for having me.
Awesome. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. Well, we appreciate it. We have a gift for you that we'll do off camera. We normally do have our own tradition. We always have a gift that we did. It's not one of those bottles, but it's a pretty cool gift, I think, because it has my picture on it, so it's always cool.
Oh,
Is your picture on this coin?
It's a squiggle in the back.
No, we're joking, but I do appreciate that. Again, Kevin, thanks you for coming on. It's awesome for you to come in. We kind of started to become friends, from freaking in the bar that I hang out at. So I appreciate that, and thank you for coming in and sharing your story. It's an important story. I think every veteran's story is important, and hopefully it helps someone. That's been the goal there. And I wish something like this was out for to help everybody a long time ago. That's kind of the reason why we're doing that. So we'll head into the part of the night where we honor a Patriot who unfortunately took their life. So tonight we're going to honor U.S. Army Warrant Officer 1 John Michael Werka Jr., who was 36 years old. John went by Johnny. So Johnny took his life on January 14th, 2021 while he was deployed in El Salvador. Johnny was born October 2nd, 1984 in Tampa, Florida. He graduated from Lake Mary High School in 2003 and from Florida State University in 2008, where he excelled as a collegiate hockey player. Johnny enlisted in the U.S. Army in 2010. He attended Infantry One Station Unit Training and Airborne School at Fort Benning, Georgia, and then Special Forces Assessment and Selection and Qualification course at Fort Bragg, North Carolina. After successfully completing the Special Forces Qualification course in 2012, Johnny was assigned to the 3rd Battalion, 7th Special Forces Group in Eglin Air Force Base. Johnny deployed multiple times in support of U.S. Southcom, U.S. Northcom, Operation Enduring Freedom, and Operation Freedom Sentinel. Johnny was commissioned as a Special Forces Warrant Officer in 2020. Some of Johnny's awards and decorations include the Bronze Star, Second Award, Special Forces Tab, Ranger Tab, Parachutist Badge, and Special Operations Diving Supervisor Badge. Johnny is survived by his wife, Erica, daughter, Audrey, parents, John and Allison, brother, Daniel, and sisters, Christina and Julia. And again, if you're a veteran who's struggling, needs to talk to someone, you absolutely need to call the Veterans Crisis Hotline. And if you're not a veteran or you know someone that is a veteran needs to talk, have them call that number. You can dial directly 988, or you can dial 1-800-273-8255 and press 1, or you can text 838-255. So again, want to conclude episode 33. Want to thank you for coming in, Kevin. Thank you, Emily, for coming in. Well, it was a pleasure to have you in. It's always actually, it's getting more special to have the spouse here, because it was moments where like you were looking at her and talking about some stuff. So it is fun. We're hoping I'm kind of plugging Emily here. We need to get a dependent on a spouse on. So I'm plugging there. She's seen it. We don't bite. We have good whiskey, good food. So maybe we can get that on. But it is important. I do want to thank you for coming in tonight. Also, thank you for your support of Kevin, taking care of your family while he was taking care of our soldiers. So thank you for coming in. And we'll actually see everyone next week. We have a quick turnaround. I had to change the schedule for Kevin. My son was only playing the state baseball championship. It was kind of important. So kind of a big deal. But again, June 14th, we have to celebrate a couple things. Again, happy birthday to the Army. And then also today is National Bourbon Day. So hopefully you've enjoyed some bourbon. If you haven't, grab your favorite bourbon. We're going to have a couple more pours here. And again, we'll see you guys in about a week. Thank you.
It's Flag Day.
Oh, there's a good salute. No one saluted you.